Chapter 181, Billions. Explosions accompanied by powerful shockwaves erupted. When everything calmed down, the necromancer's body was in tatters. It had survived thanks to the defensive spells. Neo stood calmly. Even after using a large-scale attack, he was barely short of breath. The necromancer started to laugh. Its chuckles turned into maniacal laughter. I see. So, that's how it is. Neo, although confused, didn't hurry to end the battle. He wouldn't be able to leave the window until the entrance reopened. There was a lot of time to spare. Besides, he was waiting, hoping his shadow would spawn. Though there were low chances of it happening, given that he hadn't encountered his shadow until now. You must be the leader of Awakeners. That's why you are so strong. The necromancer pointed his long, elongated finger at Neo. Although he was shouting, there was a sense of pride in its gaze. The damned Hanma family must have spent centuries cultivating you. He nodded to himself as if he had understood everything. After they prepared their ultimate weapon, they opened the seal and sent you inside to fight me. What are you talking about? Neo frowned. I'm just an academy student. No one sent me here. There is no need to lie. Someone as strong as you must be the strongest, or at least among the ranks of the strongs. Stop deluding yourself. I'm strong, but far from the strongest. The necromancer grinned. He remained firm in his speculation. Oh. Then humor me. If you aren't the strongest, where would you place yourself? I, for one, was on par with Titans and the revolutionary who opposed them. I was one of the pioneers of the apocalypse era. Neo clicked his tongue. The centuries of loneliness seemed to have messed with the necromancer's head. Even if he was strong in the past, he had been surpassed long ago. Answer me, strong one. The necromancer urged. I'm somewhere among the top 25 students in my academy. Is the academy the name of the organization ruled by the strongest awakeners? There. That's just in my academy. Neo cut off the necromancer and continued. I'm barely in the top 100 if we count the demigods who are around my age and didn't enter the academy, or those who used magical drugs or forbidden techniques to grow stronger. His words made the necromancer stiffen. Neo ignored his shock and continued. These are all who are on par with me in my age group. If we are talking about demigods who can crush me easily, there are a million of them at least. The number jumps to billions if we count the mythical beasts, monsters, and otherworldly entities in elemental dimensions. Neo shrugged. I'm strong, but far from the strongest. Don't lie. The necromancer scowled. Do you really think I will believe those foul lies? What about the Titans? What about the Resistance? What about them? If you are average, then what are they? Gods? Yes. They've become gods centuries ago. The necromancer swallowed his words. He couldn't believe Neo. However, he knew Neo had no reason to lie. What? What is the highest stage of awakeners in your era? The necromancer asked. He wanted to know. The myths, the strongest awakeners, were the second stage awakeners. Neo opened his mouth. I would call them fifth stage awakeners if I were to use the terms from your era. What about the gods? Their strength can't be measured in stages. The necromancer's head dropped. His eyes lost their drive. What have I been doing for centuries? If I'm so weak, then have I not done anything but waste my time? Neo didn't answer. The spirit seed the necromancer cultivated had the potential to shake the world. However, the spirit seed was unstable. From the looks of it, the necromancer didn't have a strong mind to bear the burden of the spirit seed that had been cultivated from the grudges of hundreds of souls. So, in a sense, it was true he had wasted his time. If you've received your answers, I'll finish you now. Neo walked up to the necromancer. He placed his palm on the necromancer's head. The monster didn't resist. While he did have absolute trust in his immortality, he just didn't care anymore. Neo activated his blessing. The life of the necromancer played in his head. A man was traveling across the country with his family. His children were happy since it was the first time they sat in an airplane. The smile of his family warmed his heart. He felt it was worth it to spend a portion of their family savings for the trip when suddenly the apocalypse hit. The plane crashed, and the man was the only survivor. Years later, he came to realize he had awakened the moment the apocalypse began and used the death element to save himself. He was talented in the arts of death elements. The man had been living like a ghost until then. However, the realization gave him a purpose. He would revive his family. He dabbled in the forbidden branch of death, necromancy. The soul hunters from the underworld were deployed to take care of the man. He defeated them easily. The man, drunk on his powers, started to use sacrifices to grow stronger. He was powerful. So powerful that the Titans and the Resistance, led by Zeus and Ares, had to set aside their differences to stop him. It wasn't until the Hanma family interfered that the man started to lose. The family dabbled in the art of necromancy and, for some strange reason, they weren't hunted by soul hunters. With the Hanma family providing the knowledge of the strength and weakness of necromancy, the Titans and the Resistance forced the man to retreat into a rift connected to the shadow world. Defeated, the man realized he had been sealed in the rift between his world and the world of shadows. However, he didn't despair. He wasn't alone. He used the people he had kidnapped, killed them, and captured their souls, torturing them for centuries. The grudge born from the souls was an excellent fertilizer for the spirit seed of darkness. Centuries later, when the man was beginning to lose his sense of time, suddenly the entrance of the rift opened from the other side. The necromancer tried to invade the world and kidnap more souls to torture. A black-haired swordsman blocked his path. Neo exhaled lightly when the memory ended. His eyes glowed. His hand was covered in a starry, ethereal aura as he opened his mouth. Niles Radcliffe, you've led a life full of sins. Not only did you forget about your family, the reason why you became a necromancer, you became drunk on your powers and committed atrocities that destroyed the lives of tens of thousands of innocent souls. Even after being sealed, you never repented. You tortured the souls of more innocents to strengthen yourself. You, Niles Radcliffe, are a sinner. The necromancer realized something was wrong. Neo wasn't trying to kill him. But his senses were warning him as if an attack capable of reaping his life was coming. I sentence you to an imprisonment of 1,500 years in the fifth circle of hell. Chains erupted from the ground and bound the necromancer. They started to pull him into the ground. You. What are you doing? Who are you to judge me? The necromancer shouted, panic evident in his voice. The chains burned his soul, making him cry. He glared at Neo. You damned boy. I spoke to you as an equal, and this is how you treat me. Look at yourself. Your soul is even more accursed than mine. Your sins are far heavier than what I've accumulated. You have no right to judge me. The necromancer, unable to complete his words, was taken away by the chains of hell. It was easy to defeat the necromancer since he was a soul, and my blessing can judge souls. Neo looked at his hand. He couldn't help but recall the necromancer's words. My sins, Neo muttered. Using darkness to devour the souls of others allowed him to gain their stats and abilities, but it also brought their sins. It came as no surprise Neo's soul looked corrupted to the necromancer since he had devoured a lot of beings and was now carrying their sins. Shaking his head, Neo looked at the bones jutting out of the ground. Each bone was a prison for a different soul. He joined his palms, gathering the power of his blessing, and pushed it into the ground. The land was covered in a starry glow. Hundreds of memories started to play in Neo's head. The souls cried. They let out the grievances in their hearts. Neo listened to them patiently like a parent. He could see the lives they'd lived. Some of them were captured when the necromancer was trying to escape. They were innocent and had lived good lives. Neo sent them into the cycle of reincarnation. Some of them were sinners. Neo didn't send them to hell since they had already suffered in the necromancer's hands. He turned their souls into pure divine energy using the blessing and let them become one with the world. Some of the souls were innocent, but they didn't want to reincarnate. The centuries of torment under the necromancer destroyed their will to live. Neo used the blessing to soothe their souls. If they still wished for death after that, he let them become one with the world. Is satisfied with your judgment. You have received. Chapter 182, Second Stage of the Blessing. Neo could hear the souls thanking him. He freed them. They were grateful for ending their centuries-long despair. Sensing their emotions, Neo understood why his blessing had cried. Among the hundreds of voices, Neo heard a particularly different voice. Is satisfied with your judgment. Has unsealed the second stage of your blessing. Neo felt his soul expand. A soothing warmth surged throughout his body and it turned into searing pain. Neo fell to his knees, clutching his chest, gasping for breath. Something dark. Something ominous appeared within his soul. He closed his eyes, concentrating. It wasn't easy to locate his soul. However, Neo, having reached adept mastery in death, could use death elemental vision. It allowed him to see souls if he concentrated. Neo followed the power of his blessing rushing into his soul. He saw that within himself. It was small and broken. The power of his blessing nourished the hell present in his soul. Suddenly, his divine energy churned. It flowed into his soul, helping his blessing repair the hell. The cracks disappeared slowly. Neo lost track of time. He remained on the ground, writhing in agony as his blessing and divine energy repaired the hell. It took days for the process to complete. His body was covered in sweat when it ended, and over half of his divine energy was constantly flowing into the hell to keep it working. What is this damned thing? The hell had always been in his soul. Just broken. The blessing repaired it. This thing better be useful for making me go through all that. He tried to look inside the hell. Basic information about it flowed into his mind, and he saw 13 layers, 13 circles, of different hells. Is this? The place was empty. Neo could see the whole place with a glance. Each layer was as big as a city. He noticed the necromancer's soul in the 5th circle. The 5th circle, the furnace of regrets. Neo pursed his lips. As if led by his instincts, he concentrated and used his blessing. His avatar appeared inside the 5th circle. He looked around. The place was covered in flames. He walked towards the burning soul of the necromancer. The necromancer raised his head sluggishly when he sensed another presence. The flames, instead of killing him, forced him to relive the worst regrets of his life. His gaze was unfocused and meek. You. His eyes regained clarity when he saw Neo. It's you. He tried to pounce on Neo, fueled by rage and hatred. The flames surged and pushed him down before he could hurt Neo's avatar. The necromancer was not discouraged. He began to laugh. I told you. You are just as evil as me. Now you've been imprisoned in the hell too. He was gloating until he saw Neo unharmed. The flames weren't burning him. You. Why are the flames not harming you? Why? I was the one who sent you to the hell. Who do you think I am? His words answered plenty. They were enough for the necromancer to know why Neo stood in the hell perfectly fine. Before the necromancer could answer, Neo cancelled his avatar. His sense of self returned to him. Opening his eyes, he saw himself sitting on the ground inside the shadow window. Only the necromancer is present in my hell. It's almost as if he is a gift to celebrate the achievement of creating my hell. His hell was still young. The hell would grow stronger and larger as Neo fed more divine energy to it, as he regained his blessing and as he ranked up. But again, what's the point of the hell? Unfamiliar information surged inside Neo's head. They were the memories of the necromancer. Unlike earlier, they weren't a simple overview of his life, but detailed recollections of some of the necromancer's experiences. He exhaled deeply, unable to believe what he had just gained. Is this really true? He raised his hand and muttered chants under his breath. The chants were something he learned from one of the necromancer's detailed recollections. O death beyond, be my hands, crush my enemies. His divine energy churned. The incantation activated. Giant bone hands appeared from the ground, waiting for Neo's command. Neo was stunned. He shouldn't have been able to use an incantation just by knowing the chant. He needed to train, gain experience, and increase his understanding of the chant first. I stripped the necromancer of the incantation and took it as my own with the power of the hell. His amazement only increased. He gained only one incantation among the dozens of incantations and divine energy manipulation techniques the necromancer possessed. However, this could be solved as his hell grew stronger. When that happened, he would be able to strip more possessions from the sinners trapped within him and use their abilities as his own. Finally, I got something good. I don't need to depend on darkness and my luck to gain abilities from the corpses from now on. Theoretically, darkness allowed him to gain knowledge, memories, experiences, and techniques when he devoured someone. However, he had gained only stats until now. Secondary stats on top of that. He knew his luck was bad, but wasn't it too much to not gain a single technique or spell after using the darkness for years? The hell is great, but I wish there was a more detailed guide. A thick book appeared inside his soul before he could complete his sentence. Neo stared at the book with a strange gaze. They actually gave me a guide. He opened the book. It contained examples of judgments. Each example allowed him to experience the life of a sinner from a bystander's point of view and the sinner's point of view. After the vision ended, the book asked him to give a judgment. It would grade his judgment. He received C and A+ for the 2 examples he tried. The blessing had been guiding him until now during the judgments to make sure he didn't make mistakes. He lost its guidance after he opened his hell. The book and the examples were to help him train. A chuckle left Neo's lips. Even the underworld is adopting modern education system. What's next? Sending practice questions online. He closed the book after going through 2 examples. Even for him, seeing so many memories of different people was exhausting. Neo stood up and dusted his clothes. He looked around. My shadow never appeared until now. It's safe to say it won't spawn in this window. Neo pursed his lips. He had expected to fail during the first few tries. Now, what do I do about this? He stood in front of the spirit seed of darkness the necromancer created. It was powerful, but unstable. Obodus was far stronger, and it had even more potential. The spirit seed of darkness might be a treasure in others' eyes. However, it was lackluster for Neo. While he was wondering how to deal with the spirit seed, Obodus' voice appeared inside his head. No. The single word carried intense emotions. Panic, fluster, and jealousy. The sword didn't want to share Neo with another spirit. Neo smiled bitterly. Fine, I won't take this spirit. Obodus buzzed with happiness. Neo commanded it to devour the spirit seed. The sword's blade split apart from the tip. It opened its maw and gulped the spirit seed in one go, chewing it for a few seconds. It's bitter. Sense +4 spirit synchronization +3. Neo could feel the connection between him and Obodus grow stronger. After completing the goals he had inside the window, he returned to the entrance. There was no need to close the window, even though he could do it without proper equipment. If he closed it, he would fall into the world of shadows, if he was lucky. In case he was unlucky, he would end up in the gap between dimensions. Waiting like this is just wasting time. I might as well train. Neo brought his palms together until they were almost touching. Red lightning crackled between them. Instead of creating large bolts, he tried to create smaller, compressed bolts. His brows creased. He tried to compress the lightning further and further until it was strong enough to kill the space. There were different ways to create a miniature black hole. One of them was to destroy the space. Neo kept trying to conjure enough death to kill space. He failed. His mastery of death was lacking. He was gasping for breath after hours of training. If I can't do this here, I doubt I'll be able to do it outside either. Windows are a passage between 2 dimensions. The space here is unstable and weaker. I should be able to do this, damn it. The entrance of the window reopened a few days later. Neo jumped out when the time came. An invisible power wrapped around him as soon as he fell through the sky. Someone is holding me with telekinesis, he thought. The telekinetic hold brought him down carefully. Chapter 183, Court Hearing. The ground below was filled with adventurers. Leading them were powerful demigods. They are Templars. Each one of them was far stronger than him. The adventurers were emitting intense bloodlust, while the Templars stared at him curiously. Neo's gaze shifted to the blue-haired young man. He was holding him with telekinesis. Placing Neo on the ground, the blue-haired young man turned to his colleague. Check him for injuries. Yes, sir. The green-haired woman's hand glowed. Tiny white pollens materialized around her. They flew towards Neo and seeped into his skin. He is perfectly fine, the woman said, perplexed. Are you sure about that? The blue-haired Templar, Elijah, questioned. He has been alone inside a tiger-grade window for 7 days. Yes, he has no injuries, and he is in peak physical condition. Elijah stared at Neo with a deep gaze. He opened his mouth, addressing the adventurers and other Templars. Send Team 1 and Team 2 into the window. The leaders, Templars, will secure the perimeter. Follow the standard protocol. The adventurers moved. Only Elijah and Shanna, the green-haired woman, stayed with Neo. Neo Hargraves, we have a lot of questions for you. Follow us. Neo nodded. He entered a limo with them. Inside, Neo met Professor Evelyn. It's good to see you in health, Neo. She smiled and passed him several documents. While there is a ton I would love to say, thank you for protecting the city while the management was slow to react, congratulate you on returning and a job done perfectly. I believe we should focus on the urgent topics. Shanna coughed when Professor Evelyn mentioned management. It was a jab. Professor Evelyn clicked her tongue slightly when Elijah ignored her words. You entered a window without safety gear or permission. You used city-level attacks in the public domain. That's 2 major crimes, 17 minor offenses, and more if we were to count how recklessly you fought. It's 20 years in prison minimum. She continued. Normally, you would go straight to the Senate and be made to stand before the jury, but the Academy appealed for your case. All matters have been settled while you were in the window. You just need to give us a detailed summary of your time inside the window and the labyrinth, and you are good to go. There will be no prison sentence and you will be rewarded for your deeds. Professor Evelyn continued to give him pointers about what to say and what not to say while giving the summary during the court hearing. Elijah looked pissed, probably because he had to ignore the blatant misuse of authority. But he had orders from the higher-ups. And he had to listen. After the pep talk ended, Professor Evelyn let go of her professional demeanor and praised Neo for his bravery. She smiled, saying he exhibited an impressive control of death, making sure to hit only his opponents. According to her, a lot of adventurers had sent gifts to him since he was the only reason they were alive. Their talk ended, and the car became silent. Elijah stared at Neo with an unfriendly gaze. Shanna was going through her social media account. Neo took out his device to pass the time. He noticed hundreds of messages from his friends. After giving them a short reply, he saw the messages from unknown contacts. They were adventurer teams and other organizations trying to recruit Neo, or they were news reporters trying to fix an interview with Neo. Neo ignored them. Just then, a new message popped up. Henry Hargraves. Henry, how are you? Me, good, I'd say. Henry, when will you return home? Me, no idea. I'm going to the academy right now to deal with the proceedings of entering a window illegally. Henry, there is a press conference of Hargraves Corporation tomorrow before the launch of the auction. Henry, be on time. You'll be attending it. Henry, P.S. If those Templars or academy staff give you trouble, give me a call. Henry Hargraves. Neo smiled. Henry was the same as ever. We are here, Elijah spoke. Neo stepped out of the car first. The noises of hundreds of cameras clicking surprised him. The entrance of the academy was filled with cameramen and reporters blocking their path. Neo Hargraves, we would like to know. Divine Ruler, our news channel. The flashes of cameras almost made Neo think he was standing in front of a blinding headlight. The reporters tried to rush up to Neo. No interviews. Neo Hargraves has to stand in a hearing. He can't waste his time here. Elijah's words were polite yet sharp. The reporters hesitated. They looked at each other and opened a path to the academy. Neo, escorted by Elijah and Shanna, entered the academy premises. On the way, Shanna's device rang. Elijah stared at her with a frown. How many times have I told you to keep it on silent while we are working, was what his gaze was saying. Sorry, just let me check it. Shanna took out her device. Her brows jumped in shock. It's a message from the Team 1 leader. They've closed the window, she said. Already. That was fast, Elijah muttered. About that. Shanna pursed her lips, wondering how to break the news to Elijah. What is it? The team leader of Team 1 reported they didn't do anything. All shadow monsters were defeated already. They only encountered shadow monsters that were born a few hours ago, nothing else. Her words made the group stare at Neo. Did you defeat the shadow monsters? Shanna asked cautiously. Neo nodded. Shanna opened her mouth and closed it, unable to form words. All of us thought you were hiding there for 7 days until you escaped. Even if you didn't do that, no one could have predicted that you could clear the window in only 6 days alone. Elijah spoke in place of Shanna. The way he stared at Neo changed. His gaze contained a hint of acknowledgement and wariness. The four of them stood outside the doors of a conference room. Professor Evelyn opened the door. This is as far as I'll go. Elijah and Shanna entered. As Neo was about to enter, Professor Evelyn gave him a smile. Don't be afraid. Even if something goes wrong, the Academy will have your back. You've done a service by protecting the city, we'll make sure you aren't punished for it. Neo nodded and entered the room. The place had a big round table and a small platform in the center. Several figures sat around the table, including Charlotte. Elijah took the seat next to her, and Shanna sat beside him. Please stand on the podium, Elijah said. Neo followed his words. Elijah turned to Shanna. Shanna understood the cue. She took out her device and a pen to note down everything that would be spoken thereon in the room. Neo Hargraves, this is a hearing initiated to understand the cause of the window number 38,023 appearance and the disappearance of the labyrinth. You have been called into the hearing because you are the prime suspect related to both incidents. Now, Is it true that you defeated the Minotaur and entered the window that appeared later above Greenwood City? Elijah questioned. It is. Elijah nodded. Shanna continued to jot down the points. Please give us a detailed summary of everything that went down. I entered the labyrinth and. Please, start from the beginning. Neo pursed his lips. I don't understand your question. Then, I'll change the question to make it easier to understand. Elijah took out several documents. He flipped through the pages. According to the evidence, you tried to take an SS rank mission from the Academy's hall and were refused. The SS rank mission was to defeat the Minotaur. Neo frowned. He did not understand what Elijah was trying to say. Elijah continued. In its place, you took an S-rank mission and multiple lower-ranked missions, all connected to the labyrinth in one way or another. Is this all true? Yes. I see. Elijah nodded. Thereafter, you proceeded to enter the labyrinth the same day. The same day, you encountered survivors who had the key to the Minotaur's chamber. And, the same day, you reached the Minotaur and defeated it. Is this all true? It is. I see. Elijah closed the documents. He interlocked fingers and leaned over the table, staring at Neo. The above evidence shows that you knew the location of the Minotaur and sought it out purposefully. Is this true? Neo Hargraves, your actions have caused the loss of assets worth $3,000 million and nearly caused the death of thousands of civilians. All of it would have been prevented had you warned the Labyrinth Association that you knew the Minotaur's location and you were going to defeat it. If people knew the labyrinth was going to disappear, a lot of chaos could have been prevented. Neo shifted his gaze to Charlotte. The principal was frowning. Elijah, despite being ordered to end the hearing without any trouble, was clearly not planning to do that. This damned brat's sense of justice always causes trouble. She massaged her brows. Chapter 184, Court Hearing 2. Charlotte shifted her gaze to Neo. Their eyes met, and Neo turned to Elijah. The small gesture was enough to tell her Neo was not going to stay quiet. Evelyn should have told him to remain silent if something goes wrong. Then why? She wanted to sigh. All students I take interest in turn out to be massive headaches. I was worried since Elijah was following in Elizabeth's footsteps. But now it looks like I need to worry about one more person. She watched Neo open his mouth. I found the Minotaur by luck. By luck. Elijah gave him an unsatisfied stare. You think anyone here believes it? You have something to prove that says otherwise. Elijah had evidence that suggested Neo knew the Minotaur's chamber location. However, there was nothing to show it was not luck. He couldn't even ask for someone with the ability to sense truth and lies, since he was doing this trial by going against his superior's wishes. By the time he asked someone for help to verify Neo's words, someone with a higher rank than him would come and take over the trial. Elijah seemed frustrated and angry. Neo didn't care. He had used the labyrinth's map to locate the monsters before he went out to fight the Minotaur. He had killed almost all monsters and saved many adventurers while trying to find the key to the Minotaur chamber. Unlike what Elijah believed, he had saved hundreds. Not to mention that tens of thousands would have died when the labyrinth closed and the window opened. And millions would have died when Mira gained the spirit seed that the necromancer cultivated. Elijah grunted. Fine, I'll leave aside that matter. However, it doesn't change the fact that you damaged civilian property while fighting the shadow monsters. I did it to save the civilians. You are neither a Templar, nor a member of an organization that is licensed to fight dimensional threats, Elijah added. What you did is a crime, and you will be fined $5,000. That's all. Neo smiled. He looked at the device he had kept on the podium. You heard him, brother. Done already. Henry's voice flowed through the device. I've also compensated any civilians who were harmed during your battle. Of course, we've given them more money than what those lousy government jerks and Templars give them. Also, since you've spoken to me, I take it you've kept the device on loudspeaker. Henry questioned. I have, Neo answered. Good. Henry spoke. I hope you are listening, you cock-sucking bitch, Elijah. You have quite a big mouth for someone who was missing when the window opened and the civilians needed rescue. And you have a nasty mouth, just like always, Elijah replied. Anyway, I'm just following the standard procedures. I couldn't let Neo go unpunished if he did something like putting so many people in danger. Even if he is your brother, he needs to take responsibility. Yeah, I hope you can say the same to your superiors. Henry cut the call. Neo could tell he was pissed. Elijah adjourned the hearing after finding Neo. He didn't try to push the case. As he passed Neo, he whispered, "I don't care if you are protected by the Academy and Henry Hargreaves. You would have no choice but to take responsibility after I find the evidence of your deed." Neo remained silent. The people left the conference hall, leaving only Charlotte and Neo inside. Neo was about to leave behind them when Charlotte called him out. "Stay here." He followed her words. Professor Evelyn closed the door after everyone left. Then, Charlotte spoke. "You have a knack for creating trouble, brat." It was coincidence. "Yes, I totally believe you." Charlotte shook her head with a bitter smile. "Anyway, the reason I told you to stay back was because of something else. Tell me, did you awaken your time element?" "I did." "What happened to Professor Daniel?" "He time slipped." "I see. So it was true." Charlotte took out a piece of paper. "I asked someone to write this for me since I don't have the time element. It's just that the person who I asked had a nasty personality. So I needed to make sure what was written here was true." "What is written in that?" Neo questioned. The paper was quite far from him, but he could still read it thanks to his eyesight. However, he didn't do that to show proper courtesy. "Bits of information from your last regression. Like who Professor Daniel was and other things." Neo pursed his lips. "Why are you telling all this to me?" "No reason. I just felt like you should know about your teacher." "Then, can I ask something?" "Go on." "Who was Professor Daniel?" Charlotte read the content written on the piece of paper. "According to him, he was the founder of the Academy." Her face contorted. "He lied beautifully. See this." She showed him the paper. The sentence "Professor Daniel was the founder of the Academy" was written in red. "The person I asked this information from has unusual spell set." The fact that she wrote this sentence in red, a childish choice of pointing it out, of course, means that this is a lie. Charlotte sighed. "Did Professor Daniel give something to you that might help us verify his identity?" Neo recalled the tattoo of a dragon on his back. It could help Charlotte. However, he remained silent. "Neo, I know you might not want to do something that seems like stabbing Professor Daniel in the back. But this is important." She suddenly closed her mouth. Her expression changed as she wondered if she should tell everything to Neo. In the end, knowing Neo was bound to make it big and find out about these things in the future, she decided to reveal the information. "I'm sure you know what awakeners are, so I'll be direct. All awakeners from the Age of Gods have had happen one of three things to them. They either became a god, they died, or they betrayed us." Neo frowned. Even though he knew what she was talking about, he made it look like he knew nothing. "The ones from beyond. A few awakeners have betrayed us and joined their hands. In return, they received power and long lives. Since Professor Daniel lived long and was extremely powerful, it's weird how he couldn't become a god. There is a high chance he is an affiliate with them." Neo pursed his lips. "The ones from beyond" was a code name for them. They had many names. The Herald of the Abyss. The Voidborn. Those that must not be named. Calling out their name attracted their attention. It was why Charlotte had to use a title associated with them. Charlotte waited for Neo to say something. She sighed when Neo remained silent. "If you change your mind, come find me. You can go now." Neo nodded. He left the room. While he was on his way to the Academy exit, he recalled something and changed his path. Neo entered the mission hall. He walked up to the mission counter. "I'm here to submit the completion of the mission I took previously." "Of course, sir." The receptionist recognized Neo. She became enthusiastic, knowing he was the divine ruler. "Someone named Mira of Me and G Corporation must have sent the Academy a parcel a few days ago. The parcel contains the proof of the mission completion. During the chaos when the labyrinth was closing, Neo had given those things to Mira. After all, he couldn't carry them into the window, and he didn't have a dimensional pocket yet. I need to get a spell to create a dimensional pocket." He clicked his tongue. "Damn it, I forgot I don't have the space element, and my shadow element doesn't work." While he was lamenting, the receptionist finished her call. "Sir, I've called my colleagues and confirmed we received the parcel a few days ago. The mission rewards will be given to you shortly." Neo's device rang just when she finished speaking. He took it out and confirmed the credits. As for the material rewards, she gave them to Neo in a bag. "Thank you. The pleasure is mine." Neo left the mission hall. On the way, he took out his device. He opened the messaging app. Elizabeth. Me, can we meet tomorrow? Elizabeth. He was about to type in the address, thinking Elizabeth would receive the chat when she comes online when suddenly he saw her reply. Elizabeth. Elizabeth, where and when? Me, Street 42, Cryan City, Balsco, at 12:05 p.m. Elizabeth, okay. Elizabeth. She went offline before he could explain why he wanted to meet. Neo shook his head. I did invite her. But I wonder how she will react when I don't go to meet her. He could picture her getting bothered and punishing him for it. What is done is done. I can sacrifice a bit for the future. Trivia 4, or is it 5? The Labyrinth Association earned money through the Labyrinth and they didn't want the Labyrinth to disappear. Of course, they couldn't outright ban demigods from defeating the Minotaur. Which is why they made a rule. Only grade 3 mythic demigods and below were allowed to enter the Labyrinth. It was theoretically impossible for grade 3 mythic demigods and below to defeat the Minotaur. The Senate didn't call the Labyrinth Association out for making such an absurd rule because the Labyrinth Association appealed that the Labyrinth could be used to train weak and lower-ranked demigods, and won the case for the appeal. While it might have seemed that the appeals were useless, they were not. Originally, the Labyrinth Association wanted to allow the entrance to only awakened demigods. It was after a few court cases that the limit was increased to grade 3 mythic demigods and below. Chapter 185, Arriving at Hargrave's mansion. Neo walked towards the academy gates. He noticed the crowd waiting for him, and he frowned. Should I call someone to pick me up? Just as he thought along those lines, a black sedan entered the academy premises. It stopped in front of him. The door opened, and a familiar figure stepped out of the car. Greetings, young master. It's good to see you too. Neo nodded, acknowledging the butler's greeting. He wondered if his brother sent the butler, knowing he would need him. The butler bowed before he opened the car's door. Neo sat inside. He sank into the plush leather seat of the luxurious car. The smooth ride made him lethargic. His eyes started to droop. The fatigue from days-long battles was catching up to him. The butler, a stoic figure, smiled when he saw Neo struggling to keep his eyes open. He drove the car silently through the academy gates. Reporters waved cameras and microphones with excited shouts. The noises helped him stay awake. He focused on them. Neo. Neo Hargraves. Over here. The plethora of voices prompted Neo to look over. Neo Hargraves, thank you for saving us. My daughter and I were immortals slaying death. Immortals slaying death. We are reporting live from the doorsteps of Demigod Academy. The Divine Ruler has left the premises unhindered. The Senate hearing. Enter of Undying. Enter of Undying. The cheers were all addressed to him. Enter of Undying. Neo's nose wrinkled. Who gave me that nickname? The title was given to you when you slayed the Minotaur, young master. The butler smiled appreciatively. Neo's frown worsened. Couldn't they call me something simpler? The Divine Ruler was enough as it is. Enter of Undying is a bit too much. Despite his complaints, a strange sense of pride swelled within him. I feel like I've become a local celebrity. He couldn't deny the feeling was addicting. The car lurched forward, and the butler navigated through the crowd skillfully. They inched closer to the Hargraves estate at a steady pace. It took them a few hours to reach their destination. Neo pursed his lips when he saw the mansion. He had seen photographs of the estate, of course. But experiencing it in person was something else entirely. His heart raced. The realization that this was the first time he was returning home as Neo Hargraves made him feel fuzzy. He repeated the words, feeling a sense of familiarity and unfamiliarity with them. The butler pulled into the driveway. The massive iron gates of the mansion swung open. The meticulously manicured gardens and pathways lined with luminescent flowers on either side surprised Neo. It's beautiful. It feels like I'm entering a castle. The butler parked the car before the main mansion. He opened the door for Neo. Neo hesitated for a moment. He took a deep breath to steady himself and stepped out. A bag rested over his shoulder. Before coming back home, Neo had contemplated how to deal with the item inside the bag, the trident of Poseidon. He had been struggling to find a way to put the weapon to use. It was too powerful for a demigod of his rank. Still, the weapon was too useful to be left rotting inside his room. After thinking it through, he decided to bring the trident back home. Neo exited the vehicle. He noticed a small crowd outside the Hargraves' main gates of the mansion. They were the residents of Greenwood City he saved or his fans. They came to cheer him, to celebrate his return. Neo shifted his gaze from the gates towards the mansion. He noticed his brother, Henry, standing just outside the massive double doors of the mansion. Next to him were his friends, Jack, Nathan, Arthur, Felix, Mars, Sean, and Clara. The group's expressions varied, from concern to relief to anxiety. Before Neo could say anything, he noticed Henry's gaze. His brother was staring at the bag in his grip. Can he see what's inside? The thought prickled at Neo's mind. A flicker of uncertainty arose in his mind. Should I just reveal the trident to him? The trident was one of the few weapons that could harm Neo. And it could harm Henry too. He is definitely going to ask where I got it. Neo shook off the thought. He maintained a neutral expression as he approached his family and friends. Hey, everyone, he said, trying to sound casual. Neo. Jack rushed forward, his brow furrowed. You had us worried sick. Are you okay? You didn't get hurt, did you? I'm fine, Neo replied, the practiced words rolling off his tongue. I wasn't injured much during the incident. Not injured much. Clara's voice rose in disbelief. You took on that horde of monsters alone. You even entered the window alone after that. An entire team of mythic demigods is needed to clear a tiger-ranked window. And it still takes them a few weeks. You took 1 week only. How can you not be injured after going through all that? Her excessive concern surprised Neo. Following her, praises and complaints from others poured in. Felix and Jack complimented him. Arthur had a troubled expression, happy that Neo returned safely, but he couldn't praise such a reckless attempt of Neo. Neo smiled inwardly. While he didn't show it, he appreciated their concern. He glanced back at Henry, who was still eyeing the bag. The tension was palpable. Neo could tell his brother had questions. He chose to ignore it for now, not wanting to escalate the situation further. So, what are you all doing here? Neo asked, diverting attention away from himself. We wanted to welcome you home. What really happened out there? The media is going wild with speculation. They're calling you a hero, but... Arthur stepped forward, cutting Mars off. He could not ignore the issue anymore. But what? But why did you do that? You had no obligations to save anyone. Fending off an invasion from an unidentified window is nothing but suicide. I know you wanted to save the civilians, but at times like this, you need to think carefully. Would you have retreated if you were in my place? Arthur's mouth clamped shut when Neo asked him a question instead of answering. I wouldn't have entered the window alone at least, he replied finally. The words feeling inadequate even as they left his lips. I would have asked for help from the adventurers or waited for reinforcements. Is that so? Said Neo. He had his reasons for entering the window alone. There was no way he would have risked showing the seed of darkness cultivated by the necromancer to anyone. Arthur had no more words. Neo's question made him realize he had been acting like a hypocrite again. Let's go inside, Felix suggested. The group entered the mansion. A grand foyer greeted them. It was adorned with exquisite chandeliers that cast shimmering light over the marble floors. The walls were lined with portraits of stern ancestors, and the air hummed with an unsettling familiarity. Neo couldn't help but be stunned again at the grandeur. Once they settled into the spacious living room, Neo placed the bag on a nearby table. He could feel Henry's gaze boring into him. He really looks pissed. Of course, he is pissed. I'm carrying a nuclear bomb, one that is especially dangerous to me. I bet he wants to know what was going through my mind bringing a weapon like this without any security to protect it. The room buzzed with conversation. His friends wanted to know what happened within the labyrinth and the window. Neo recounted his experience for them. At the same time, his mind focused on another topic. I wonder if things are going to be okay with Elizabeth. I know she is strong, but I'm taking a huge risk by asking her to meet me tomorrow. Finally, Henry couldn't hold back any longer. Neo, what's in the bag? He asked, his tone low but firm. It's something I picked up at the academy. Along the way. Yeah, I found it in a nice shop while coming back home. Henry's eyes narrowed. He knew the answer was a big, fat lie. Henry opened his mouth to press further, but Neo raised a hand to stop him. Later. It was rare for Neo to dodge questions like this. The atmosphere shifted as silence settled over the room. Everyone realized that something was wrong between Neo and Henry's conversation. However, they didn't ask him about it, knowing it would be rude to intrude in family matters. Let's talk about something else. Neo diverted the topic openly. How's everyone doing with the academy? Any good news? The conversation shifted. Everyone was happy to bury the stifling silent atmosphere. Soon, laughter and stories filled the room. Jack recounted how he had been trying to increase the number of summons he could do together. Sean revealed he had awakened the time element. While listening to them, Neo's gaze drifted back to the bag. What was he supposed to do with the trident? He had spent countless nights pondering about it. In the end, he decided to risk it all. Starstream News headquarters. A heated discussion brewed within the bustling media office of the local news station. Reporters huddled together, speaking with excitement and ambition. "Did you see the footage from the Greenwood incident?" Gwen exclaimed. Her eyes were wide with enthusiasm. "Neo Hargraves is a sensation. We need to capitalize on this." "Absolutely," Carl chimed in. He scribbled the notes furiously. "But what's going to make a bigger headline? The weapon auction or Neo's bloodline?" The murmurs of agreement rippled through the room. "The auction is being held to advertise the new weapon series of Hargraves Corporation. Everyone is already focusing on that. It's better for us if we make the headline on Neo Hargraves instead of trying to do what everyone is doing." Gwen nodded. She conveyed her intentions to her fellow reporters. Neo is the son of the Hargraves family, a family with deep ties to the late Hephaestus clan. Everyone believes the Hargraves family has the bloodline of High God Hephaestus. Of course, it's not concrete proof as it's been ages since a demigod was born in the Hargraves family. She continued. "We digress. As I was saying, it is widely theorized Neo Hargraves has the bloodline of High God Hephaestus. However, his affinities say something different. He doesn't seem to have any metal affinity or fire affinity." Gwen's voice trembled with excitement. "What is Neo Hargraves' bloodline? He is certainly not a descendant of High God Hephaestus going by his affinities. This could be a gold mine for our articles." Her words earned her satisfied nods from others. "It's a good headline. But we need to tread carefully," an older reporter cautioned. "He's still a budding talent only, and the auction is a significant event. Let's focus on that, and give a bit of spotlight." The others agreed. No matter what Neo's bloodline was, it couldn't overshadow the auction event. Hargraves' mansion. Neo leaned back in his chair. Laughter echoed off the walls, but his heart remained heavy. He continued to go over his plan regarding the trident. It was simple. But he was worried Henry would object. The conference is tomorrow too. Tomorrow would bring the press conference, and with it, more attention than he had bargained for. Neo would need to face the media. He would be confronted with the questions that would inevitably arise about his bloodline and his newfound fame. "Lucas tried to kill me because of my bloodline. I still don't know what it was about. There is a slight possibility the other clans might come after me too when they come to know about my bloodline." He glanced at Henry, who was still watching him with an intensity that made his stomach twist. Thankfully, Henry seemed to be holding back the curses because of his friend's presence. Chapter 186, Talk about the Poseidon's Trident. Author's note, Neo wasn't fined $5,000, but $5,000 million. They had lunch. Neo was about to leave for training when the butler came to him. "Master Henry is calling for you, young master." "Got it. I'll be there." He turned to his friends. "I'll see you guys in the evening. There is something we have to talk to you about. Make sure to come back and don't go somewhere to train while leaving us behind," Jack mentioned. His gaze was serious. The rest were the same. Neo didn't understand what it was about, but he nodded. He moved through the mansion corridor and stood outside Henry's office doors. Before he could knock, he heard Henry's voice from the other side. "Come inside." He entered the room. It was lavish and big. The office, grand and spacious, was adorned with dark mahogany furniture, velvet armchairs, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, and a marble fireplace. Warm, ambient lighting illuminated opulent artwork and a vast, polished desk. Neo sat on the seat across the table. Henry stared at him for a few seconds. "Is there anything you want to say?" "The academy. Tell me what was in the bag." Neo's brow furrowed. So it came to this. He couldn't avoid it anymore. The replica of Poseidon's trident. "Who gave it to you?" "The late Tyrant Empress." "The late Tyrant Empress." Henry leaned forward, his eyes burning with fury. "That bitch cares about that weapon more than her life. There is no way she would give it to anyone, even on her deathbed." "How do you know about the weapon?" "I thought no one knew it existed." "Don't try to change the subject, little shit." Neo pursed his lips. "She gave it as a commemorative gift for Amelia and my baby." Yes, that thing. Henry gave Neo an unamused stare. Are you going to keep using that excuse? It's not an excuse, though. I can call that bitch's daughter and get a medical report. I doubt she would listen to you after how you insulted her mother. Neo's words got stuck in his throat when Henry took out his phone. He opened the messaging app and showed it to Neo. This. Neo looked at the chats between Henry and Amelia. You two talk with each other. That's. I thought you hated the tyrant and her daughter. Look at the messages closely, dumbass. Amelia de Beaufort. Amelia, brother. Neo started to train like a maniac again after he returned from the window. Amelia, brother, I wanted to give Neo a gift. Amelia, brother. Amelia de Beaufort. Neo's brows grew tighter when he read the chats. Amelia was treating Henry like her big brother. Worse, all her conversation topics revolved around Neo. Henry wasn't any better. She isn't as stubborn as her bitch mother and has a good personality. I don't hate people like that. This time, Neo gave Henry an unamused stare. Nice personality. All you two talk about is me. You creepy fucks. Neo knew Henry cared about him more than his life, and Amelia couldn't see him in harm after they grew close. Still, he wished he had high mastery in time so he could go back in time and stop himself from reading those accursed chats. They looked like two fans talking about their favorite idol. Whatever. Neo placed Henry's device back on the table. I have the trident because I asked for it in exchange for saving the queen. Although I couldn't save her, she still gave it to me. Neo expected Henry to object to his blatant lie. Both of them knew Elizabeth wouldn't give the trident for such a simple reason. Henry leaned back into the chair. He stared at Neo, lost in thought, as he drummed his fingers against the armrest. How did you know about the existence of Poseidon's trident? Henry questioned. Neo remained silent. Henry didn't force him to answer and ask something else. The trident possesses the ability to kill immortals. It's dangerous to you. Why haven't you destroyed it yet? If the Senate gets news about it, they'll do anything to get their hands on it. They are desperate to find a weapon that can kill an immortal, Henry explained. They know about my immortality already. Neo acted surprised. Don't underestimate them. The Senate is a gathering of the strongest demigods. There aren't many things they aren't capable of. Henry continued. Now, tell me, why haven't you destroyed the trident and instead brought it home? I want to undergo exoskeleton reinforcement. For the first time, Henry was surprised. His expression turned into one of indignant fury. Maybe I misheard you. Repeat what you said. I want to undergo exoskeleton reinforcement. Henry slammed his fist into the table and glared at Neo. Do you realize what you are talking about? That weapon is far too strong for you. It would kill you if you tried to touch it, and you want it to reinforce yourself. The Hargraves Corporation should have methods to limit its power until I'm strong enough to unleash it fully, Neo interjected. You fucking crazy bitch. Henry looked like he was ready to explode at any moment. Even if we do that, the weapon has the Immortal Slayer trait. One mistake, and you are dead. It will kill you, an immortal, if it isn't compatible with you. You lunatic. Brother. Henry's mouth clamped shut when Neo called him brother. He couldn't remember when was the last time Neo said that word to him. I don't have talent. Neo was reluctant to lay his weakness bare for others to see. But he knew he needed to do that for Henry's approval. Besides, he was okay with Henry knowing the truth. It might look like I have heaven's gifted talent, but it's completely the opposite. I have visited the underworld. It was enough to strengthen my aura of death. Yet there are people around my age who, despite not having such an advantage, can compete with my aura. I've spent hundreds of years to increase my mastery of darkness. All that, and I'm only at adept mastery. Neo chuckled bitterly. Rank 3, Year 2, Demigod Academy, Eric Garland. He is 1 year older than me and has a higher mastery than me in darkness. Let alone him, there are countless people who have reached higher mastery with only a few decades of training. Neo's expression worsened. Saying everything out loud was enough for him to realize how weak he was. I've spent years regressing, devouring monsters, strengthening myself. And I'm only a grade 5 mythic demigod. You know, Morrigan. I'm sure she is either already a grade 5 mythic demigod or she is near. Neo's heartbeat increased. He had to suppress the tremors in his hands. He felt exposed. Repeating the same days, same months, same years until I forgot the count. It took me all I had, And I'm still not the strongest in the academy. There are second-year students who are stronger than me. Chapter 187, Their Request. Henry remained silent. He could feel how hard it was for Neo to say what he was saying. It takes me 10 steps to do what others can do in 1 step. Those people you are comparing yourself to are geniuses, Neo, Henry spoke. You shouldn't compare yourself to them. My enemy won't care if I'm a genius or not. I can survive and win only if I'm strong. Neo continued. At my current pace, it won't be long before others start to catch up with me. My only advantage is my immortality. I can take bigger risks to get stronger. The trident is a chance. It can kill me, but it can make me stronger. Stronger. He looked Henry in the eye. There was a deep determination behind his gaze. I need that strength, even if it kills me. Henry sunk into the chair. He massaged his temples and looked out of the window. There, he could see a gigantic tornado beyond the horizon. The tornado could be seen from anywhere on the continent. Neo followed his gaze and noticed the tornado. He opened his mouth. Void window number 8477. It appeared suddenly and wiped out the entire Hephaestus god clan. No one who entered that window has returned. That window killed. Neo pursed his lips. Mom and Dad. He turned and faced Henry. The god clan supported by one of the high gods couldn't survive. It's proof enough how much strength matters. Please, brother, let me undergo exoskeleton reinforcement. Henry's scar started to throb as he stared at the tornado, at the window that took everything from him. The window that forced him to become the abomination he was now. Ah, fuck. He pulled out a cigarette and took a puff. The pain lessened after a few drags. This fucking shit. Henry knew the importance of strength. He had cursed everything. The fate, the world, and himself, for making him what he was. For not allowing him to awaken his god blood. Fuck. Henry threw the cigarette after taking a few puffs. He stared at Neo after calming down. What exactly is your reasoning behind using the trident? The exoskeleton reinforcement isn't something you can do multiple times. If you are going to do it, you should choose the best weapon, or metal, you have, Henry explained. The trident has an immortal slayer trait. It has a good compatibility with my death element. And it might help me in building my concept. The concept of the death element. Henry was slightly surprised. What concept are you trying to build? I'll tell you when it's completed. For now, it's barely reached its infant stages. His current progress was around 10, approximately 15%. It helped Neo had a clear image of his death element's concept. However, he would be lying if he said he knew what to do to progress further. Fine. Henry snarled. But if you die, make no mistake, I'll pull your soul back from the underworld and kill you again. That's impossible. Neo smiled, knowing Henry was worried about him. It's not impossible. All I need to do is threaten those Templars from the Temple of Death. Neo's smile disappeared. Please don't do that. Because I can see those Templars complaining to Grim Reapers and then Barbados coming to me, asking me what I did. The principle was enough. Neo didn't need another person after him, telling him he was creating problems everywhere. You can go now. The procedure for the exoskeleton reinforcement will take a week to complete. Until then, you should focus on the press conference and the auction. Neo nodded. He stood up. See you later. After Neo left the room, Henry took out another cigarette. Fuck. He knew Neo had been pushing himself to grow stronger. But what he heard from Neo was beyond his imagination. He looked out of the window, at the tornado. From desire springs ambition, and from ambition arises power. His face contorted. He hated seeing Neo in so much pain. But it was necessary. Neo needed to be prepared to face them. Neo met up with his friends. Everyone was training in the private training rooms inside the mansion. They had a lavish dinner a few hours later. Henry made sure to treat them to the best of the best. After dinner, they decided to play table tennis. They did a blind lottery for the matchups. Neo sat at the side while Jack and Sean were having a match. Mars was next to Neo. Suddenly, Neo opened his mouth. What is it? All of you have been on toes around me. Mars smiled. It's always hard to hide things from you. No, it's just that you guys suck at it. Jack. Especially. Hey, I can hear you too. Jack shouted while playing table tennis. Stop slandering me. Neo rolled his eyes. The group laughed. Although they were looking at Jack and Sean play, Neo could tell their attention was on the conversation between Mars and him. "We are lagging behind," Mars spoke. "It's clear looking at you that we need to step up our game. That's why we wanted to ask you to help train us." "You want me to train you?" Neo swept his gaze around the room. They nodded. Neo thought about the proposal. Before answering, Neo turned to Arthur. "You want me to train you too?" "Yup." There was a slight sense of hesitation behind Arthur's answer. Neo sensed it easily. "Arthur, I know you are saying yes because of everyone here. Just tell me your honest opinion." "I'm saying the truth." "Arthur." Arthur closed his mouth. A sigh escaped his lips. "Fine. It's true, I think training under Neo is useless. It's not that I'm looking down on Neo, but he doesn't have much talent. Neo is growing at a blinding pace." "True. I have no idea how he's doing it. However, I can tell that it's not because of his talent," Arthur explained. "What?" Jack spoke. "You never told us anything like that." "I couldn't say it." "I'm sorry," Arthur said. "There you have it." Neo interjected. "It's useless to train under me. I'm growing stronger at a fast pace because I have my own methods. You guys can't use it, or I would have revealed them to you already." Everyone became silent. They were left confused, not knowing how to react. "But," Neo continued, "I can become a target for all of you. A target you need to surpass." His words caught their attention. "Let's do this. We'll have a battle when the next semester starts. All of you can fight me together. You can ask for more people to help you, because I frankly don't think you have a chance against me with just you 7, and if you manage to defeat me." "If we manage to defeat you?" Jack questioned. Chapter 188, Bones of Old Gods. "I'll get you guys an exoskeleton reinforcement surgery if you defeat me." The group's eyes widened. "Am I dreaming?" Jack muttered. "This is too good to be true." The surgery was expensive. Using the cheapest metal for it would cost them at least $1,000 million. The price increased if the patient wanted to use a stronger metal. "That's not all," Neo added. "I'll use orichalcum for the surgery for all of you." Jack opened his mouth and closed it, unable to form words. Orichalcum was expensive. It was rarely sold for money, and when it was, its price would go into billions. "You really are filthy rich," Mars chuckled from the side. Neo could throw billions as if it was nothing for him. His words made them excited. The exoskeleton surgery, especially with orichalcum, wasn't something they could get. Only Arthur had a dubious expression. While others returned their focus to the game, Neo stood beside Arthur and spoke in a whisper. "You can use another metal if you have something better." "No need to be shocked. Your face was saying everything." Arthur smiled bitterly. He kept his eyes on the game and spoke. "Yeah, there is something else I want to use instead of orichalcum. That is." Arthur pursed his lips. He wanted to be cryptic but decided against it. "Bones of Old Gods." "I see. Sheesh, I thought this would be enough to surprise you. I'll be surprised if Jack gets more marks than us in the exams." Arthur chuckled. "Do you know about the Bones of Old Gods?" "Somewhat. They are the bones of titans. Not many of them remain now. Almost any bone that was excavated from the corpses has been used to create ancient weapons." Neo nodded. Arthur continued. "You might not know, but ancient weapons were the names given to the replicas of the weapons of gods. The lightning bolt, Poseidon's trident, the Hades." "Arthur." Neo interrupted. "We aren't in a class." Arthur's face flushed, and he chuckled awkwardly, scratching the back of his neck. Both of them became silent for a few moments. Neo took out his device and scrolled through his messaging app. He was going through the random numbers that messaged him after he closed the Greenwood labyrinth and window. He stopped searching when he found a particular number. "Arthur, where are you going to get the bones?" "I haven't thought about it. I do have a place where I can start searching. It might take a few months." "Not might. It definitely would take you a few years, if you are lucky enough to find a bone of an old god, that is." Arthur couldn't refute Neo's words. Before he could say anything, Neo spoke up. "Keep your schedule open for the next few months. I'll help you get a bone." "Oh. What do you mean?" "I'll tell you about it when I have completed the preparations." The table tennis continued late into the night. They split off after the game and went to their rooms. Neo opened the door to his personal room. Just as he stepped inside, he sensed a presence. He noticed a woman with mechanical legs sitting on the chair next to his bed. What do you want? Luna was surprised. Not who are you, but what do I want? Do you know me? He didn't know who she was. Even if he didn't, he had noticed her outside the labyrinth, and she had sent him a message, so he knew she was coming. I don't know you, but no one can enter the Hargraves mansion without permission. I'm pretty sure you are here because my brother allowed you. You are good, the woman spoke. You thought about the situation carefully instead of panicking. Neo sat on the other chair. Luna, the woman, opened her mouth. I'm Luna Burton. I was, the leader of one of the excavation teams of the Hargraves Corporation. The excavation teams. Our jobs are to collect materials for weapons. Precious materials are always rare and in places that are out of reach. Hargraves Corporation sends powerful demigods to collect these materials. Neo nodded. What do you want with me? Instead of answering, Luna asked something else. Do you know about the bones of old gods? I do. Oh, that's surprising. I thought it was a subject for the third semester in the academy. I have a studious friend. He told me about them. Well, this makes things easier. Luna added. The bones of old gods can make extremely powerful weapons. The trident of Poseidon, the trident you gave to Henry, is made from multiple such bones. For the first time, Neo was surprised. This was something he didn't know. You know about the trident? Yes. Why wouldn't I know? Oh, wait, I guess I forgot to tell you about this. She explained. I became a member of the R&D department after leaving the excavation team. In fact, I'm the leading researcher responsible for converting the trident into a usable serum for you. I see. She waved her hand. Anyway, the point is, bones of old gods are extremely rare. Even a fingernail-sized piece of bone can throw the world into chaos. Everyone would compete to get its ownership. And I know a place where we can get those bones in abundance. Come on, you don't believe me, do you? She slapped her mechanical legs. I lost these legs while trying to get to that place. Heck, the bones used to create the Soul Series weapons were excavated from there. Though I lost my legs and entire team in the process. As she spoke, her eyes went towards Obidus resting at Neo's waist. The sword was one of the 4 Soul Series weapons. Only Neo knew the Soul Series weapons would be called God Slayer weapons in the future. The bones of old gods were that powerful of a foundation metal. Neo opened his mouth to speak, but Luna spoke before him. I'm not trying to guilt-trip you or anything. We were paid for the job, and we took it knowing the risks. My point is, the place I'm talking about exists. There is a huge amount of bones that have yet to be excavated. Neo pursed his lips. Where is this place? Glad you asked. She grinned and pointed at the floor. There. The ground. No, she corrected him. The continent. The bedrock of our continent is the corpse of the great titan, Oceanus, and his blood is the ocean. Silence. Neo didn't say anything. Luna, believing Neo was too shocked, gave him time to digest her words. She opened her mouth after a few minutes. I know it sounds completely unbelievable. Anyone would tell you I've gone insane. But the weapon you are carrying, the sword, is the proof that bones of old gods exist in the continent's crust. I have plenty of proof that it is Oceanus' corpse. She continued. The problem is, the aura of death surrounding the corpse of a great titan like Oceanus is too powerful. Whatever killed Oceanus was so strong that its aftereffects haven't disappeared until now. My legs, and my team, died thanks to it. I've tried everything, but my legs won't heal or regenerate. That's how strong the death around the corpse is, she explained. So you want me to go down and excavate the bones? Yes, that's exactly what I want. Luna's brows furrowed. Although she had been excited, her enthusiasm started to wane after talking with Neo. He was a rich and strong. He was a prodigy with a bright future ahead of him. There was no reason for him to endanger his life and excavate the bones of the great titan Oceanus. He would refuse. Luna was sure of it. Got it. However, I have one condition. Please think about it again before you refuse. Wait, what? I'll bring one of my friends along with me. Luna blinked. She had a hard time believing her ears. You are agreeing to my request? Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. She jumped and hugged him tightly. Neo heard his bones creak when she failed to hold back. The air was pushed out of his lungs. I'll go and tell the news to the other guys. As for your friend, he can follow you if he gives his consent. She waved and jumped out of the window in an excited, hurried pace. Neo shook his head with a smile. I secured a way to get the bone for Arthur at least. Neo slept after taking a shower. He had to undergo thorough makeup from the professional for the press conference after he woke up. Although Neo wanted to refuse, he agreed to it when the butler remained adamant. He met up with his friends before noon and went towards the press conference venue. The place was filled with reporters. They tried to surround Neo when he arrived, though the guard stopped them. I'll see you guys later. Got it. We'll go get seated in the guest area, Arthur said. They were about to leave when Mars approached Neo. Neo. He placed his hands on Neo's shoulder. You've become a celebrity thanks to everything you've done in past months. The reporters will ask questions that you won't like you and try to get answers from you. Stay calm. Answer only if you want. If you don't, divert the question. Jack spoke from the side. If you are nervous, just know things like these will become common in the future. You'll have to attend a lot more interviews, bigger than this one, because you are a friend of the future great necromancer, Jack Hanma. Something at this level shouldn't bother you. Neo rolled his eyes. The group laughed. They split off and went to their respective areas. Neo met with Henry. You finally look presentable, little shit. You look good too. Henry clicked his tongue when he saw Neo wasn't bothered in the least with the curses. Are you ready for the interview? Somewhat, Neo answered. But is there a need for all of this? Of course, there is. Henry snorted. It would look weird if the heir of Hargraves Corporation didn't attend the press conference. Neo's brows creased. Heir. Stop asking everything twice, dumb fuck. Chapter 189, Press Conference. Henry did not answer Neo. He went up to the stage through the back room. Look at him ignoring me. Shaking his head, Neo followed behind him. The stage lights and hundreds of camera flashes instantly assaulted his eyes. He frowned slightly, his eyes taking a few seconds to adjust. The stage was wide and empty with only Neo and Henry on it. There was a few meters of gap below the stage and the seating area. The guards and the butler stood in the gap. Henry wore a microphone to enhance the volume of his voice. He gave a ceremonial speech, without any curses, much to Neo's surprise, before he reached the main topic. Today, we, the Hargraves Corporation, are launching a new weapon series, the Soul Weapons. We'll give a short demonstration before we get down to the selling points of the new weapon series. A few crew members arrived on the stage with 10 thick metal blocks and a few swords. They left after placing the metal blocks and the weapons on the ground. Henry walked up to the metal blocks. He patted them. 45% purity adamantium. It can tank up to a hit from 125 strength stat and is almost immune to common elements like elementary mastery fire, ice, and lightning. These things here have the same defenses as a peak grade 3 mythic monster that has its stats geared towards constitution. He picked up the sword and tapped its blade. It's a standard blade made by our company for grade 5 grade 4 mythic demigods. Henry slashed the adamantium metal block with the sword. As you can see, an unawakened like me cannot put a scratch on it. The mythic demigods will be able to damage the metal blocks if they attack it instead of me. However, even they would find it difficult to destroy the blocks. Henry placed the sword on top of the metal block. He stood beside Neo and placed a hand over his shoulder. He spoke to the audience. Today's demonstrator will be my brother, Neo Hargraves. I'm sure many of you know about him. He has been quite famous for doing some vigilante stuff. The reporters chuckled. No, I'm being honest here. His actions, no matter how correct, were illegal. Quite a few media stations are painting him in an antagonist light. Calling him names, calling him evil, since he uses dark elements. But look at him now. Does he look like a villain? No, he looks like he has seen a ghost because I haven't cursed in the past 15 minutes. The chuckles grew louder. Henry smiled. Neo could tell Henry was enjoying his job. And that's what he is. A normal high schooler who entered the academy through his hard work and became the divine ruler. Henry was satisfied with the result of his digressive talk. He stood away from Neo and spoke. Neo, what are your current masteries in your primary elements? Adept, both. Neo wanted to roll his eyes. No one told him he was the demonstrator. That's awesome. It's rare to see anyone with such high mastery in death and darkness. I'm sure it took a lot of hard work on your part. It did. Neo pursed his lips. He could tell Henry was shaping his public image. That's incredible. Now, can you create an aura blade? An actual aura blade, of course. Neo nodded. Although he hadn't made a proper aura blade before, it wasn't hard with his mastery. He held his fists together as if he was holding an invisible sword. The divine energy in his core churned. Red lightning crackled around his arms. It condensed and condensed until it was turned into the shape of a sword. A rush of emotion appeared within his head. Obudus started to sulk. Neo conveyed to his sword spirit he was holding another weapon just for a moment. Make a complete aura blade with both of your elements, Henry spoke. Neo frowned, but he complied. Black flames materialized around him. They covered his aura blade. The flames compressed until they looked like cold metal. The red lightning peeked through the surface of the sword at random intervals, giving the sword an illusion of red lightning moving within it. Darkness for strengthening the blade and allowing the sword to block attacks. Death to increase the damage. Neo used two elements together to compensate for their weakness. His aura blade looked similar to Obudus. Obudus' emotions flared. Happiness, jealousy. Neo found it hard to maintain the aura blade. Although the aura blade was small, it was deadlier than the giant swords he used to attack the necromancer. The audience started to sweat. Their pupils dilated and their heartbeats quickened. They could sense the powerful death within Neo's hand. He could kill all of them with a flick of his hand. There is no need to worry, Henry spoke up. Proper safety measures have been prepared for the demonstration. He motioned towards the butler who was standing below the stage. Sir Sebastian V. Roche is standing guard. I'm sure all of you know him. He is a living legend. I'll refrain from boasting about him since the demonstration isn't related to Sir Sebastian. But this should be enough for all of you. With Sir Sebastian here, you'll be safe even if a god clan attacked the press conference right now. Henry continued. You can enjoy the demonstration without any worry. Now, Neo, please attack the adamantium blocks. Neo nodded. He walked up to the first adamantium block and slashed. His aura blade passed through it like a knife cutting through butter. The top half of the adamantium block slid off the cleanly cleaved surface. Henry clapped. A marvelous demonstration. He turned to the audience. We've seen Neo's performance with his aura blade. It's exemplary, but as you can see, it's taxing for him to maintain the aura blade. He snapped his fingers. A giant holographic screen appeared in the air. It contained basic information about aura blades. Aura blades, while powerful, are too draining. Almost any demigods who can use them, don't use them. The ratio of output to divine energy consumption for aura blades isn't worth it, or so the demigods say. This is why they use weapons and coat, or superimpose, if I were to use a more technical analogy, the aura blade on their weapon. The output is almost the same, and the divine energy consumption is reduced by half. Henry continued to explain pros and cons of aura blades. He clarified why demigods use their weapons to create an aura blade instead of creating an aura blade out of thin air. This sword. Henry picked the standard sword that was brought to the stage. Chapter 190, Press Conference 2. It is one of the weapons demigods use to create aura blade. Neo, can you demonstrate your aura blade with this sword? Understood. Neo nodded. He still felt weird seeing Henry talk normally. But he ignored it. Or tried to do so at least. He took the sword from Henry's hand. Obudus didn't complain. It was trying to stay quiet, believing. Complaining too much would annoy Neo. Neo could sense how much it hated him touching other weapons, swords especially. If he were to put Obudus' feelings in words, he was a husband who was spending a night with another woman. He spoke a few words of comfort to Obudus. After calming down the sword spirit, he channeled his aura of death and darkness into the sword. The blade started to crack. Neo realized it would break if he did not stop. Don't hold back, Henry said. Neo nodded and slashed. The sword crumbled away before it could touch the adamantium block. There you have it. Henry turned to the audience. Our company's product is already well known in the market for its durability. There is no need to explain that it's one of the best products with a good cost-to-performance ratio. Yet, you saw how easily it broke when the weapon is pushed beyond its limit. One of the reporters raised his hand. Yes, you can speak. Isn't it too much to use Neo Hargraves as a benchmark? The reporter continued. He defeated the Minotaur. Even if he is a mythic rank demigod, he is in the upper bracket among them. The standard weapons are used by new grade 5 mythic demigods up to grade 3 mythic demigods. They aren't strong enough to destroy the weapons with their auras, The reporter explained. Miss Eli Spencer from Big News Daily. Miss Eli, you say the demigods aren't strong enough to destroy a weapon like Neo did. What about the monsters? A grade 3 monster whose stats are geared towards attack will do major damage to the standard weapons in combat. From our calculations, the amount an average demigod spends within 5 years to repair their weapon is enough to buy a new standard weapon. A standard weapon of Hargraves Corporation, while cheap, still costs years of savings on the Demjode's part. This is same as saying they are burning through their savings to repair their weapons. Henry added. If this continues, the demigods will never be able to buy another gear. And without new gear, they won't grow stronger, they won't be able to defeat more monsters, and they won't earn more money. They'll be stuck at their current level for their whole lives. Hargraves Corporation doesn't want that. Our goal is to create affordable and powerful weapons that anyone can use and help them grow stronger. The reporter jotted down his answer and returned to his seat. More reporters posed their questions. Henry answered them patiently. After a while, he spoke. Now, we'll present the soul weapons. The crew members brought a suitcase to the stage. They opened it and presented it to Neo. Neo took out the sword from within it. Obidus, just wait for a few seconds. The sword didn't complain. But he reassured it nonetheless. Begin the demonstration. Neo poured his divine energy into the blade swiftly. He could not hear any faint murmurs from within the sword like he could hear from Obidus. Even though both were Soul Series weapons, they were qualitatively different. The adamantium block was sliced cleanly, and a deep gash was left behind on the ground. This is the ability of our Soul Series weapons. They boost your control over your primary elements as well as improve the circulation of divine energy. Henry explained the benefits of the sword. Everyone thought the demonstration had ended. Before the reporters could start the interview in earnest, Henry raised his hand to stop them. Neo, please draw Obidus. Although confused, he grabbed the hilt of his sword. Suddenly, his aura expanded explosively. It was as if Obidus wanted to show it was better. The aura of death and darkness was so thick that the adamantium blocks and the stage started to crumble away before Neo did anything. The butler had to step up to stop the damage from spreading. A thin, transparent golden film covered Henry, the stage, and the reporters. Soon Neo's aura returned to his control. The performance of Neo's sword left the report slack-jawed. The weapon you just saw was the true soul weapon. Only 3 more such weapons exist. They will be sold at the auction the day after tomorrow. You can ask the questions now. The reporters jumped into action. Henry picked them at random and listened to their questions. What's the commercial difference between normal soul weapons and true soul weapons? The standard soul weapons are mass-produced, while only 4 true soul weapons exist. Another reporter stood up. What makes the true soul weapons different? There must be a reason if you are auctioning them separately. True soul weapons can grow along with their user. Conversely, the opposite is also true. As long as the weapon grows stronger, its user will too. The conference hall went into a frenzy. Henry's words were too absurd to be believed. But the proof was in front of their eyes. Neo had been seen using Obidus during ranking tournaments when he was a grade 5 awakened demigod. He was still using the sword, and it had grown in its abilities visibly. Mr. Henry, if your words are true, then a true soul weapon can allow Mars Everhart, the fallen genius, to grow stronger. The Ares clan would have paid any price for a weapon of that caliber. Why are you putting them in an auction instead of selling it to the Ares clan directly? Is it because you want the clans to compete for the true soul weapons? That's a tricky question. Henry chuckled. There are many reasons for my decision. But the main reason is the true soul weapons themselves. They choose their owners. If they don't like Mars Everhart, he can't use them. The reporters grew excited when they heard him. After all, his words were essentially saying true soul weapons were alive. Instead of confirming their guess, Henry dodged around the questions, saying any more information about the true soul weapons was confidential. The interview continued until one of them spoke to Neo. My question is for Neo Hargraves. Go on, Neo said. The short clip of you defeating the legendary Minotaur with only 2 attacks has gone viral. Not to mention, you proceeded to defend Greenwood City until the authorities came to the scene. Prior to this, you became the ruler by defeating Morrigan de Montaigne, who was the irrefutable rank 1 of this year. After becoming a ruler, your exceptional performance in the S-rank mission was also quite shocking. The reporter continued. My question is, who are you? Frankly, You are too talented to have a minor god's bloodline. We want to know what is your bloodline. An exceptionally powerful bloodline can be the only reason how you could grow so strong in such a short amount of time. The question came. Neo had expected it. You want to know my bloodline? He opened his mouth. Chapter 191, I am. You want to know my bloodline? He scanned the crowd, his gaze unwavering, cool as a winter's midnight. My bloodline is named Monarch of Death. Silence. A beat passed. No one dared to speak. Then, he added. It's the bloodline of the great god of death, Hades. For a moment, absolute silence blanketed the room. The reporters took a few seconds to digest his word. Their faces shifted from disbelief to awe. The conference hall erupted in a blinding flash of cameras and a chaotic flood of questions. They spoke without waiting for their turn. Their voices merged into a sea of incomprehensible noise. Neo picked one of them. Neo Hargraves, are you sure about your bloodline? The bloodline of the Great Death has never appeared in history. This is not a simple headline. If you're telling the truth, today will go down in the history books. The principal of the Demigod Academy can vouch for my bloodline, Neo said. Next question, please. Another reporter stood up, her voice quivering with excitement and doubt. Hargrave's family is an offshoot family of the Hephaestus god clan. How is it that you possess the bloodline of Hades? I just have it, Neo replied bluntly. His voice carried an edge that made the reporter flinch. He turned to another reporter for their question. You are the only bloodline holder of the Monarch of Death. That automatically makes you the clan head of the great god clan of death. What are your intentions regarding the future of your clan? My current goal is to pass the academy. Anything other than that comes after. Neo continued to answer the reporters with patience. His remained voice calm, his expression unreadable. Finally, near the end, one of the reporters asked a controversial topic. Neo Hargraves, you possess the bloodline of the great god Hades. One of the three great gods. The god that rules wealth, the underworld, and death. Doesn't that mean you naturally have the highest degree of talent? I'm sorry, I don't understand your question, Neo responded. It's simple, actually. Until now, you've been a dark horse, an uprising demigod with no talent, who reached the apex through sheer hard work. But wasn't that all a lie? Nothing you achieved was the result of your hard work. It was all your talent. Neo fell silent. The question hung in the air. He waited for the reporter to finish, and his gaze remained unreadable. Your strongest elements are death and darkness. Don't they come to you naturally with your bloodline? It's proof enough that your success is built on the talents you were born with. Neo raised an eyebrow. So, you're saying that bloodline alone decides talent? Yes. Neo nodded. The corner of his lips rose into a faint smirk. You are. Carl from Starstream News. Mr. Carl, how many children of Hades can you name? Carl's mouth clamped shut, his face turning pale. Please, go on, Neo nudged him, his voice dripping with irony. I'm sure you won't say I'm the first son of Hades. If bloodline alone is enough to make one talented, the other children of Hades must be as gifted as me. Please, name some of them. The reporter had no words. He could only offer an awkward smile and sit down, defeated. Street 42, Cryon City, Valsco. Elizabeth waited at the pre-decided location. Her eyes scanned the busy street. Neo had told her to meet here today. She ended up arriving an hour early. Left with nothing else to do, she loitered by the sidewalk. The street was bustling, alive with the hum of voices and laughter. Elizabeth noticed several people sneaking glances her way. A few brave ones approached her, going as far as asking her name and number. Her ethereal beauty caught attention of all. Passerby. She was in a disguise that resembled her original appearance, only her hair was black instead of its usual pure white. Since she was an exalted demigod, Elizabeth looked like someone in their 20s. Before Elizabeth left, the principal had warned her something like this would happen. She thought it was the principal's needless concern. But experiencing it in reality was a headache. Some attempted small talk, trying to gain her attention. She ignored them as irritation flickered in her eyes. Her hand twitched. She had the urge to send them scattering, but she restrained herself from blasting the entire street off the map. Where is he? She muttered under her breath, impatience settling in. Is he really going to show up? She had no idea why Neo called her here. But, knowing Neo, it had to be for an important reason. An hour passed with no sign of him. During that time, Elizabeth checked the latest online news and saw Neo at the Hargraves Corporation press conference. Her eyebrows furrowed as she watched. Still, she held on to the thought that there had to be a reason why Neo called her here. Sighing, she decided to enter the coffee shop next to the street rather than waiting outside. The door chimed as she entered, and she took a seat near the entrance. After ordering a coffee and sipping it slowly, she was approached by one of the staff. "Hello, could we ask for a review?" A young girl stood beside her, smiling politely. Elizabeth stared at her with a frown. The girl's smile faltered. She became nervous under Elizabeth's piercing stare. It's fine if you don't want to leave a review," the girl stammered and retreated as fast her feet allowed her. Elizabeth's gaze didn't leave her for a moment. "That's a high-level disguise artifact," she thought to herself. "Who is that girl?" She suppressed her curiosity. The girl could be a Templar on an undercover mission. Even if she wasn't, it didn't concern Elizabeth. Elizabeth was enjoying her coffee when murmurs broke out in the coffee shop. "Holy! The bloodline of Hades. That's a first. I told you. Neo Hargrave was too strong to have a normal bloodline." The people around were eagerly discussing today's press conference and the shocking revelations it had brought. Almost every other person was talking about Neo, their voices carrying a mixture of awe and envy as they recounted the details. It made Elizabeth happy and irritated. Her jaw tightened as the constant chatter surrounding Neo filled the room. The press conference had ended an hour ago, yet there was still no sign of Neo. Her impatience simmered as she glanced around, hoping for even a glimpse of him. It was then she overheard another piece of conversation. "Sigh, I wish I was Neo Hargrave." "Stop it, Dan. Just because he has a great bloodline doesn't mean he has everything served to him," the friend replied, rolling his eyes. "Thousands of children with Zeus bloodline are born every year, yet only a few of them have the talent and are able to become successful. Besides, Neo surpassed everyone within a few months. That's not something talent alone can achieve," the friend said with a shrug, his tone almost reverent. "I don't want his talent," Dan muttered stubbornly, his expression sullen. The two friends continued their argument, oblivious to the looks they were attracting. "He's rich. I want his money," Dan insisted with a smirk. "And damn it, that lucky bastard," he burst out, exasperation clear in his voice. "Why are you acting like this? You don't understand. That guy is the only person with the bloodline of death," he said, his eyes wide with envy. "Hundreds of girls would be ready to bear his children. He can marry as many as he wants by saying he's trying to preserve and spread the bloodline of Hades. Damn it, I'm jealous." "You should." The second friend stopped speaking abruptly when they heard a loud noise. Elizabeth had slammed her hand against the table. The sound startled everyone nearby. She gave the two friends a cold, piercing stare before turning on her heel and leaving the coffee shop. The day was drawing to a close, and her mood was at an all-time low. Normally, she would have punished Neo for standing her up like today, but affected by everything that had happened, she did something different. With a deep, frustrated sigh, she messaged him, asking why he hadn't shown up. "Neo. Me, where were you today?" "Neo, Hargrave Corporation press conference." "Me, why didn't you come after telling me to meet up?" "Neo. Neo, what are you talking about?" "Neo, wait, what? You didn't meet her?" "Neo." Elizabeth's frown deepened as she read his responses. She didn't understand if Neo was purposefully acting clueless, given that their previous messages were just a scroll above, or if he had genuinely forgotten about her. Both options was terrible. "Neo. Neo, one of my friends wanted to meet up with you." "Neo, I'm really sorry. I forgot to explain that my friend would be coming to meet you, not me." "Neo, again, sorry. My head was jumbled after the Senate trial, and I didn't properly explain it to you." "Neo." Her frustration boiled over as she stared at his messages. She couldn't tell if Neo was truly remorseful or if this was just another of his careless excuses. Chapter 192, Ares Clan and the Bargain. Elizabeth understood something was wrong. She reread the message. There was someone who wanted to meet her. Was this a direct message or a code? She thought back to everything that happened today. The only thing that stood out was the coffee shop girl in the disguise. Elizabeth frowned. "No, that can't be. There is no way Neo would go in such a roundabout way to have me meet someone. It doesn't make sense. Then again, this wouldn't be the first time something about Neo didn't make sense. For one, The chaotic time elementals around Neo suggested he had regressed approximately 4 times. However, given his current strength, Elizabeth knew he had regressed far more times. He somehow found a way to eliminate the chaotic time elementals. It should have been impossible for him. But the truth was bare before her eyes. It doesn't hurt to try. Saying so, Elizabeth closed her eyes. She chanted a short spell under her breath. Her eyes hidden behind the eyelids glowed. Her vision synchronized with every water surface within the city. Thousands of images appeared within her mind. Elizabeth looked through with a practiced motion. I can't find her anywhere. The spell Water Reflect was a powerful but widely known spell. The countermeasures against it were not secret. Elizabeth wasn't surprised. Given the woman's disguise, she had expected this to happen. The lead disappeared. Elizabeth would have hit the roadblock in her investigation. But she was an exalted demigod. She chanted more spells, layering multiple chants over the Water Reflect spell. The images in her mind moved. They showed her the memories of the water surfaces. It was easy to find the girl with her new method. Elizabeth followed the images in her mind and arrived at the location from where the girl disappeared. The alley was dark and enshrouded in shadows. It didn't take her long to find an invisible magic circle carved on the ground. There were faint traces of divine energy around the place. Elizabeth crouched and studied them. This must belong to the girl. Her gaze shifted to the diagram. Teleportation magic circle. It will activate with only specific divine energy signatures. The magic circle would explode if anyone else other than the registered divine energy tried to activate it. Elizabeth stood up. The divine energy around her churned. She used her concept. The signature of her divine energy changed, turning similar to the traces of divine energy left on the ground. She activated the magic circle. Her gaze was on the chats displayed on her device. I hope this is something important, Neo. Or she would make sure he regretted playing with her heart today. Deepest part of Ares clan headquarters. You've returned home, boy. Greetings to the clan leader. Mars bowed to the giant seated on the throne. He had flaming red hair, fierce eyes, a deep, slow voice that made one's soul shudder. Mars kept his head down. He waited for the patriarch to say something. Boy. Mars' jaws tightened. The man never called his name. He knew it was how the man was. The man treated everyone the same way. I've heard about the press conference of Hargraves Corporation. Mars' brows rose ever so slightly. His heart thumped against his chest. He struggled to suppress the growing excitement. Is this why you called me back home? Was the man going to ask him about Neo? The first child of death was certainly interesting news. Neo, he is my friend? Mars did his best to calm himself. The man, father, questioned him about his friend. Their following conversation was going to be a familial talk, from a subjective point of view at least. Not the dry clan and war god Ares ideology exchange they had been having for years. He is the leader of my team. I want to know about the true soul weapons. The man's words poured cold water over Mars' heated head. Do they work as Henry Hargraves advertises them? I do not know. Those weapons can remove the chains that have been binding you until now. You are telling me you didn't use your connection with Neo Hargraves to know more about them? The man stared at Mars with a deep, powerful gaze. Mars felt drained when the surging emotions disappeared. It was his mistake to have expected a familial warmth from the man. I don't like to use weapons. I'm a martial artist, he said. It is my path. He wanted to laugh at the irony. At his own answer. The man and he were similar. Both had the ideology of power above all. They were driven by a flaming desire to reach the apex. There was just one thing that separated them. Morals. The man was ready to sacrifice anything, anyone, for his dream. Mars was not. The clan's council has decided to be generous and buy a true soul weapon for you. The man ignored Mars' words and added. You will bond with the weapon and finally break free from the limitations that have been holding you back. Generous. Mars almost sneered. He was thankful that his friends were not here. He could show his ugly self to the man without any worry. The clan council that forced me to be the rank 100, the last rank among all the god clan members, wants to gift me a true soul weapon generously. Indeed. The man ignored the sarcasm dripping from Mars' tone. The clan council has decided that investing in you in the current situation is the best for the clan. And I have decided against following their decision. I'm a martial artist. I don't like using a weapon. Why are you being so stubborn, boy? Why? You ask that now. Mars barely stopped himself from snapping. Nothing had changed. The man remained oblivious just like always. And Mars hated him as always. I asked you a question. Mother never used weapons either. Mars could have kept his mouth shut. But he answered. Because this was one of the only topics that hit the man like a slap in the face. I want to be like Mother. A shining star. A radiant phoenix. Your mother wouldn't have liked you giving up a chance of being stronger. The man's voice grew soft as he continued. If she were here, she would have told you to take this chance and soar your wings. If she was here. Mars' voice was laced with contempt, but she is dead. 7 feet too deep into the ground. The man's face hardened. Mars didn't stop. She died and was mocked. Her martial arts, her pride, that she honed for her life was said to be the reason why she died as a weakling. You never. Mars closed his mouth. He took a breath and tried to calm himself. It was not like him to talk back against the man. Chapter 193, Temple of Void. Spending days with Neo's family, watching the two brothers interact, made him compare his family to them and caused him to explode. I'll show everyone that martial arts aren't weaker than spells or incantations, Mars said in the end. The man's aura changed. He gripped the stone throne so tightly that the armrest cracked. He closed his eyes, and when he reopened them, Mars could see the calculative intent hidden behind them. Is there nothing that can be done to change your choice? There is something, actually. The man suddenly realized he had fallen into Mars' trap. It was easy to see Mars had been waiting for this moment all along. Did you learn this from your friends? The man questioned, the sarcasm obvious. I did. Mars gave an innocent smile. The man snorted. In the end, he didn't care that Mars had a hidden intention. What is it that you wish for? Give me the weapon. Even if I fail to bond with the weapon will belong to me. Not the clan. The man's brows creased. Mars hated using weapons. Still, he wanted the ownership. His intentions were obvious. Silence reigned in the room. The man neither denied nor affirmed anything. Just when Mars thought he was going to be rejected, the man spoke. Your wish shall be fulfilled. But remember well you're part of the bargain, for it must not be forgotten. A sigh escaped from Mars' lips. You can leave. Thank you. Mars stood up. He approached the giant doors and was about to leave when suddenly the man spoke. Neo Hargraves, can he use the blessing? Mars stopped. He turned around. Blessing. Forget it. The man waved his hand. You are dismissed. Elizabeth appeared within a corridor. The paths were lit with the help of the divine energy-fueled flames burning on top of wood torches. She closed her eyes and spread her senses. This place is as big as a small city. It looked like a gigantic bunker or an underground base. Given the low number of personnel within, it was not the main base. She cast water reflect spell along with extra chants. The memories of the water played in her mind. She found the girl she had been searching for. In the memory, the girl cancelled her disguise after arriving at the base. She transformed into a man. Elizabeth had seen him before. He is. She tried to recall the man's name and failed. He is the owner of the mystical fauna sanctuary. He posted the A-rank mission that Neo's team took and failed after the Phoenix died at Lucas' hand. More memories surfaced in her mind as the words rolled off her tongue. The principal tried to catch him after the academy realized something was wrong with mystical flora sanctuary, but he escaped before that. There had been no lead on the man for months. Elizabeth understood Neo purposely sent her here to catch him. Her displeasure increased. He can ask me directly if he wants something. Why be roundabout? Despite her words, she stepped toward the man's location. She inspected the base on her way. A patrol's path intersected with hers. He stared at her wide-eyed. Intruder. Water flowed into his mouth and left him unable to say anything. He tried to move and attack, but the ball of water trapping him erased all of his spells. More patrols found Elizabeth as she kept walking. She disposed of them, making sure not to kill them in case she needed to extract information from them. It took her a bit of time to reach the man's location. She could hear his voice through the wall. Finally. We can finally move our plan forward. The failure at the academy almost cost us our plan, but now we have a chance. Elizabeth attacked. The wall exploded, revealing the room. Elizabeth entered the place through the hole. The man sat on the chair at the head of the table. He smiled at her. Wouldn't you say so? Elizabeth frowned when she realized the man was calm. Too calm. Almost as if he had expected her to arrive. Indeed, that's true. The man grinned. The coffee shop was meant to lure powerful demigods like you who came after me. Since we can't use the academy to collect sacrifices anymore, demigods like you will have to do. Elizabeth shifted her gaze to the roof of the room. A purple giant circle with one eye at its center was painted on it. Temple of Void, Elizabeth muttered. She lowered her gaze and met the man's eyes. What were you planning at the academy? Nothing complex. Burrow-tainted monsters, create upheaval in the academy, collect corpses of the most talented demigods of the generation, and use them as sacrifices. For what? Excited, the man's breath grew ragged. It was as if he could envision the future where they had succeeded. We will tear apart the fake sky and welcome the true gods. The gods of Void. Elizabeth stared at the man as if she was looking at an insect. He clearly had a few screws loose. She was about to take a step to capture him when suddenly a force yanked her from behind. A blink, and she appeared in a strange world. The sky had a roof. A chessboard-like roof that seemed to stretch into infinity. The ground was the same. There was no wall. Only a chessboard-like sky and floor. Ah ha ha ha. Elizabeth turned her gaze to the source of uncontrolled laughter. She caught sight of a man, dressed in white, laughing his heart out. The man in the base was too weak to dispose of demigods that were lured, she thought. This person must be the one who deals with intruders. The man dressed in white raised his head and stared at her. Elizabeth flinched when she saw the worms eating half of his face. The worms entered his nose and mouth, eating his flesh, yet the man acted as if he couldn't feel them. A void tainted. So you recognize this appearance? The man, a void tainted, smiled. Of course you do. An exalted demigod would have knowledge about these matters, no doubt. He laughed and spread his arms. To be honest, I was quite shocked when both of us were teleported to the dream dimension. The will of the world opens this place only when exalted demigods are about to fight. He pointed at her. Think about how I felt when I was about to attack the woman who entered our base and suddenly the will of the world pulled me into the dream dimension. The corner of his lips rose. Thanks to you, we can complete the ritual today itself. The man shot towards Elizabeth with a swift pace. I can't believe an exalted demigod delivered herself to our doorsteps. Die and become the foundation of our great ritual. Chapter 194, My 10 Beautiful Wives. A void tainted. So you recognize this appearance? The man, a void tainted, smiled. Of course you do. An exalted demigod would have knowledge about these matters, no doubt. He laughed and spread his arms. To be honest, I was quite shocked when both of us were teleported to the dream dimension. The will of the world opens this place only when exalted demigods are about to fight. The void tainted pointed at Elizabeth. Think about how I felt when I was about to attack the woman who entered our base, and suddenly the will of the world pulled me into the dream dimension. The corner of his lips rose. Thanks to you, we can complete the ritual today itself. The man shot towards Elizabeth with a swift pace. I can't believe an exalted demigod delivered herself to our doorsteps. Die and become the foundation of our great ritual. Training room, Hargrave's mansion. Status, he muttered. Neo Hargraves. Rank, Grade 5 Mythic. Divine Energy Purity, Grade 2 Mythic. Stats. Strength, 130. Speed, 128. Dexterity, 140. Constitution, 119. Luck, 0. Affinity, Death, Shadow, Darkness, Void, Water, Time. Magic Spell, Necrotic Touch, Ocean's Embrace, Essence Breath. Bloodline, Monarch of Death. Unique Skill, Death, Immortal, Eternal. Quest, Complete Barbados Training, Part 1, completed 3/5. He focused on the luck values. A sigh escaped his lips. I wonder if my luck, fate value, will affect what happens with Elizabeth. He shook his head. There was no point in thinking about what would happen. He had played his card. Now, he had to wait. Neo shifted his focus to the task at hand. He sat alone in the training room. He closed his eyes and meditated. Time elementals surrounded him, casting invisible shadows that danced along the walls. Sweat flowed down his cheek while he focused. Each droplet traced a path of intense concentration across his strained features. Rewind enchantment spell, he murmured to himself. It was a resonance rank spell. The other spells Neo had were all ingrained in his mind by Barbados, Elizabeth, or the system. He could use those spells easily. However, Resonance enchantment spell was different. He had been practicing since the day he bought it. Neo's eyes snapped open. He huffed, his chest rising and falling rapidly as he caught his breath. Damn it. Why is it so hard? He muttered, frustration etched in his voice. He closed his eyes again, focusing within himself. His lips parted as he recalled everything he had been taught in the academy. Resonance-ranked spells are third-stage spells, he repeated, a familiar chant now. It means they have 2 raised to the power 3, 8 subshells. Each subshell was made of 1 elemental paired together with 1 strand of divine energy. The subshells were arranged in a very specific formation to activate the spells. The theory is simple. But this damn spell. He muttered, exhaling as he tried to calm himself. Again. Neo closed his eyes. He had yet to reach adept mastery in time element and couldn't use time elemental vision to see time elementals. He had to focus on his other senses to sense them. He took 1 elemental of the time element. Then, he tried to place it inside a subshell with a strand of divine energy. The strand and the elemental were attracted to each other like opposite poles of a magnet. He had to strain his mind and focus to keep them separated. After creating 1 subshell successfully, Neo tried to make the second one. Second. Third. Fourth. By the time he was creating the 5th subshell, he had to use all of his focus to keep the subshells in place. Some of them attracted each other while others repelled, and it took him all of his attention to maintain the delicate balance. Beads of sweat rolled down his skin, each drop heavy with the effort he was exerting. The opposing forces between the subshells became too much, and the formation shattered, leaving Neo gasping for air. Only now did he realize how lucky he had been with his previous spells. Necrotic Touch from Barbados, Ocean's Embrace from Elizabeth, and Essence Breath spell from the system. Those spells had been wired in his mind when he gained them. Time enchantment spell, however, was something he had to train from the ground up. He had to learn it himself. Neo closed his eyes and returned his focus to training. He stood up when the door of the training room opened. The butler bowed. Young master, it's time for the auction. Got it. Neo stood up and used a towel to wipe the sweat from his brow. He took a bath and changed clothes, the butler waiting for him in the room until he was ready. Let's go. The two left the mansion. During the auction, Neo found himself alone. His friends had been called back by their families. On the way, the butler broke the silence. Young master, there is something the master ordered me to tell you. What is it? Neo frowned, noticing Sebastian's cryptic tone. It gave him an ominous feeling. Please be prepared for the marriage proposal meeting. They've been arranged after the auction ends. Marriage proposal meeting. Neo echoed, confused. Yes. Marriage proposal meeting, the butler clarified as he drove. You have the bloodline of death, and you are the head of the great god clan of Hades. Many families want to form an alliance with you. Naturally, the best way to do so is by having their daughters marry me. Neo massaged his temples, feeling a headache brewing. Polygamy was socially accepted, and he had no doubt there would be tons of marriage proposals waiting for him. Refuse them. We can't. The butler produced a letter from his bosom and passed it to Neo. Neo opened the letter. His eyes scanned the words, and his face contorted. Are they kidding me? His mouth hung open in disbelief. The butler watched Neo's expression from the rearview mirror and sighed. The Senate Council has ordered you to preserve your bloodline. Until then, you are under house arrest. The bloodline of Hades was precious. Neo was the only one who possessed it. The council's order was to ensure Neo had a child before he could be set free. Have my brother do it. He has the same bloodline. We can't be sure about that. Since Master never awakened his bloodline, there is a small chance he might have Hephaestus clan bloodline. After all, the Hargraves family belonged to Hephaestus clan. It was you who surprised everyone by awakening a different bloodline. Neo's face crumbled, his thoughts heavy. The order by the Senate Council was quite a burden. I'll ask my brother to help me. He trailed off, his frustration mounting. There was no way Henry didn't know Neo had no intention of marrying or having a child. Yet Henry still sent the letter through Sebastian. That damn bastard is enjoying this. He sighed and sank back into the seat. The butler coughed, trying to keep a straight face as he saw Neo's expression. I'm sure Master has appealed to the Senate Council already. He will try to have them remove the condition of you having a child. What about the marriage part? Sebastian. Say something. The butler coughed again. I'm not sure about that. But even if the marriage condition is removed from the Senate order, you will have to take fiancés. Fiancés. Multiple fiancés. Please read the letter carefully. Neo reopened the letter, his eyes narrowing as he scanned the text. He had missed a few lines before. 10 wives. Do I look like a rabbit to them? Neo slumped down in his seat like a deflated balloon. There was so much he needed to accomplish: get his exoskeleton surgery, defeat his shadow, complete Barbatos's trial, fight all of his friends together, pass the academy, and become a Templar. Marrying was the last thing he wanted to focus on. It didn't help his goal of becoming stronger in any way. He clicked his tongue and looked out of the window. They reached the auction venue. Neo noticed several high-ranked figures among the auction participants. Templars, Senate members, clan heads. There was no shortage of people. Neo stepped out of his vehicle and entered the auction house. He was guided to a VIP room by the butler. Chapter 195, Godslayer Weapons and 4 Horsemen of Apocalypse. While waiting for the auction to start, Neo's mind wandered. The Senate wants me to spread my bloodline. On the other hand, Zeus clan wants to kill me. Is it safe to say Zeus clan is moving alone? Or are they trying to use a smokescreen to hide their true intentions? Whatever it was, Neo had no intention of marrying or having a kid. It was clear Zeus clan bore ill intentions against his bloodline. They would go after his wife or child, too. It was an unnecessary burden for Neo. Welcome to the Hargraves auction, dear guests. Neo looked down over the auction hall from the VIP room on the second floor when he heard the auctioneer. Wealthy patrons wearing tailored attire sat in rows of velvet seats. Their eyes gleamed. Their faces revealed the anticipation they had for the auction as they murmured among themselves. The air was thick with expectation, and the soft rustling of fabric filled the silence between their hushed conversations. The golden chandeliers above cast a warm glow over the room, highlighting the gleaming jewelry and intricate designs of the attendees' clothing. The auction started. Weapons, ores, spell books, incantations, mythical beasts. Highest quality of exotic items were put on the auction. Neo watched the proceedings. At last, the host on the stage announced the final item of the auction. Dear guests, it's time to reveal the item all of you have been eagerly waiting for. The True Soul Weapon series. The audience clapped. Neo stared at the stage silently. A warhammer. A bullet. A longsword. 3 weapons were displayed on the stage. Please note, the auction house does not take responsibility if the True Soul weapon refuses to form a bond with you. The auctioneer began to explain the information about True Soul weapons. Finally, the True Soul weapons change their shapes depending on their user's preference. So please don't worry if you aren't a swordsman, but a spearman. The audience chuckled. Neo placed his hand on the obodus hilt as he stared at the True Soul weapons. The weapons of Apocalypse, he muttered. Godslayer weapons all belong to one of the 4 horsemen of the Apocalypse. Obodus originally was supposed to be owned by the Apocalypse of Death. The other 3 weapons belong to Apocalypse of War, Apocalypse of Famine, and Apocalypse of Conquest. I didn't stop the auction, Neo muttered. Was this the right thing to do? The Apocalypse, while dangerous, were not villains. Not exactly, at least. They were something like a ragtag bunch of overpowered vigilante demigods. Still, there was a reason why they were called Apocalypse. Neo watched the auction carefully. Did the Apocalypse of Death come? Neo didn't know the identity of Apocalypse of Death, unlike the other 3. His plan was to use the auction as a way to find his true identity. First, we will be auctioning the Warhammer. The bids will start at 500 million. 1 billion. 1.5 billion. 3 billion. 10 billion. The audience became quiet. They stared at the VIP room where the owner of the 10 billion bid sat. Is there anyone who wants to increase the price? The host asked. 10 billion, once. 10 billion. Twice. 10. 15 billion. 17 billion. The bidding continued to go up. Sold to Senator Ibrahim for 80 billion. The first True Soul weapon was auctioned successfully. It's the same as in the novel. Neo frowned. Where is the Apocalypse of Death? Did he not come to the auction? We will start the auction of the second True Soul weapon. Starting price is 500 million. The auctioneer pushed the bullet forward to show it to the audience. Another heated bidding took place. Sold to Gideon Everhart for 100 billion. The price of the second soul weapon jumped by 20 billion. The auctioneer hid his immense happiness behind a perfect business-like smile. Mars family bought the second weapon. Neo's expression was not good. He hated letting his friend have a weapon that was bound to the fate of calamity. But it was the only way for his friend to grow stronger. Besides, Neo himself was using obedience. If he told others not to use true soul weapons because they were dangerous, it would just make him a hypocrite. This is the last remaining true soul weapon. Don't let go of this chance, dear people. A true soul weapon is invaluable compared to money. It can grow stronger with you and strengthen your primary elemental control. It will work even if you become a paragon demigod or an exalted demigod. The auctioneer did a short marketing pitch before starting the bidding. We will start at 500 million. By now, Neo was standing in front of the glass wall that showed him the auction hall. His hand held the railing tightly. Come out. Come out, fucker. Neo had no lead left if he failed today. The apocalypse of death was a mysterious being. He was strong, rich, and, according to the apocalypse of death himself, a student in the Demigod Academy in the same year as the main cast. Neo had gone through the student list of the Academy 5 times. He even mobilized the power of the student council. Yet he was unable to find anyone who could be suspected of being the apocalypse of death. Today was the only chance he could find him. Where are you, Death? The auction ended. Congratulations to Charlotte Fontaine, the principal of Demigod Academy, for buying the third true soul weapon. Neo clicked his tongue. He left the room with a frustrated expression. The weapons were sold to the same people. It's clear the future didn't change much. Why did only he disappear? There were a lot of mysteries around the apocalypse of death. Damn it. The trip back to the mansion was uneventful. The butler passed him a few documents. What are these? The prospects who came to meet you today for marriage contracts. Sighing, Neo flipped through the file quickly. He stopped at a particular page. Why is Morrigan's name here? The Zeus clan seems to have sent her with a marriage contract. Neo frowned. Isn't this too much? The Zeus clan abandoned her because she lost her position to me. But giving up a genius like her for a connection to another family sounds like a stupid decision. It's how the Zeus clan works, young master, the butler explained. They want talented soldiers who listen to their orders without questions. Not geniuses who act on their own or failures who are useless. Neo nodded. The Zeus clan had a twisted ideology. Chapter 196, Queen of Gluttony. Shaking his head, he returned the document to the butler. I know it's an order from the Senate Council, but remove the prospects from the Aphrodite clan at least. Why are their names in the list? Understood, young master. I'll be careful next time. Neo was about to reach his room when he noticed 2 people outside the door. One had familiar blue hair, and the other was an unknown woman with green hair. You are here. The woman grabbed the wrist of the blue-haired man, Elijah, and dragged him toward Neo. Nice to meet you. I'm Senora Everly, 17th disciple of the Senator, Sir Nicholas Montague. She gave him a refreshing smile as she bowed and pulled Elijah down. This is my brother, Elijah, a Templar of the Temple of Wind. I'm sure you already know him. He was the one who handled your Senate hearing. Sorry about what he did back then. Elijah has a tendency to act out of line. She stood up straight after apologizing to him. Elijah looked away, irritated and embarrassed, but he didn't say a word. Why are you 2 here? Neo questioned. We were sent to supervise the meetings you will have with your marriage prospects. It's to make sure you don't reject them without a proper basis. Senora smiled awkwardly. Sorry about this, Neo. I know the Senate's decision might be a bit too much. However, it's for the greater good. I don't care about it. You can leave. Neo went past them and was about to enter his room when Senora called him. Are you going to meet the marriage prospects later? She asked, surprised by Neo's lack of reaction. Senators were the leaders of the continent. Their disciples were naturally treated with high respect. Even the presidents and prime ministers, and large organizations bowed their heads in front of Senora. I'm not going to meet anyone, Neo spoke. He turned to the butler. Reject the marriage prospects that've come today, Sir Sebastian. Before Neo could step into the room, an invisible hand of divine energy grabbed him. Now that is something we can't allow. The Senate has ordered you to meet them today, and you will have to follow their orders, Senora smiled. And I refuse the orders. Please, think about your decisions twice, Neo. Or else, I'll have to resort to force. Neo snorted. He had no intention of taking a fiancée or a wife. Use the force, he said. Try it if you can. Senora continued to smile, however, the fury hidden behind her gaze was clear to Neo. Neo was sensitive to bloodlust. He could tell she wanted to kill him because of how he was acting. However, she didn't act. Neo smirked. Why are you not using force? Senora turned her gaze to the butler. Sir Sebastian, please tell Neo to follow the orders of the Senate Council. I apologize, young lady, but I can't refuse the orders of young master. If he does not wish to meet the marriage prospects, then I will follow his command. Sebastian snapped his finger. The invisible hand holding Neo shattered. You are disgusting, Sir Sebastian, Senora said with a smile. You are a taint on the name of senators. Do you know how much everyone in the Senate Council, suffered when you decided to act like a butler for a dirty, small young lady? Please choose your next words carefully. I won't tolerate any insult against master or young master. Senora kept her mouth shut and stared at Sebastian with a fake smile. She turned around. Let's go, Elijah. We can't do anything if Sir Sebastian is helping him. After the two left, Neo shifted his gaze to the butler. Thanks. I only did my duty as your butler, young master. Neo nodded. He entered his room, took a shower, and called the butler again. Where are the marriage prospects? I've sent them back. Good. Neo nodded. What about Morrigan? Miss Morrigan is in the dining hall. Neo didn't need to ask to know what Morrigan was doing in the dining room. He went to meet her. There, the table was filled to the brim with different dishes. The silver plates gleamed under the warm light of the chandelier. Each plate was carefully arranged with vibrant, fragrant food. A roast duck sat at the center, its skin golden and crispy. The platter of grilled steaks with glistening juices and a hint of char stood next to bowls of mashed potatoes, creamy and smooth, garnished with sprigs of parsley. A large dish of fresh fruits, cut into perfect slices, lay beside the main courses slash. Their colors popped against the white porcelain. Pillowy bread rolls, their crusts soft and warm, were stacked neatly on a silver tray, ready to be torn apart and dipped in rich butter. There were bowls of soup as well, their steam rising in delicate swirls, with hints of herbs and spices that made the air fragrant. In the corners of the table, delicacies like grilled seafood, stuffed mushrooms, and vibrant salads added variety to the feast. Neo could see Morrigan devouring the mountain of food. Calm down. Nobody is going to steal your food. He sat next to her. She ignored him. Propping one hand on the table and supporting his chin, he turned to her. Why didn't you go back to your clan? I'm sure Sir Sebastian told all of the marriage prospects to go home. Don't tell me you decided to stay here so that you could eat like the glutton. Yes. She stopped him before he could continue teasing her. Low-ranked members like me aren't allowed to enjoy luxuries like eating good food in the clan. Neo closed his mouth. Before he could say anything, Morrigan added. I knew I could eat anything if I came here. But the clan didn't let me leave without any reason. So when the news about the clan selecting marriage prospects for you appeared, I applied as quickly as possible. Neo raised his brow. You want to marry? No, she said. I came here for food and not you. Neo didn't know whether to laugh or cry. After 3 months of being teammates, Morrigan had opened herself to everyone. Especially Neo. She didn't hesitate to treat him like a food truck. Neo shook his head and raised his hand to eat something. He was starting to feel hungry while looking at Morrigan eating everything happily. However, before he could touch anything, Morrigan slapped his hand away. She stopped eating and gave him a cold stare. It's mine. He was exasperated. War Empress my foot. She is the queen of gluttony. Chapter 197, Elizabeth's ticking time. Left with no other choice, Neo spent his time watching Morrigan. Much to his surprise, she passed him a plate a few minutes later. I don't like how you keep staring at me. Here, you can have it. Don't say I didn't share anything. Neo's lips twitched when he saw the half-eaten dish. He shook his head and took it. Just as he was about to start eating, his device rang. A call. He noticed it was from Amelia and picked it up. And Neo. Amelia's voice cracked as she sniffled. Mom, she. Come here quickly, Neo. Please. Neo's face hardened. He stood up swiftly. I'm on my way. Elizabeth's mind was muddy. The last thing she could recall was defeating the Void Tainted. She had tortured a lot of information out of him. After leaving the Dream Dimension, she attacked other branches of Void Temple she had found out about. She was injured, with half a foot in the grave after the battle with Void tainted, but there was no time to rest. The members of Temple of Void would escape. Elizabeth had to deal with them before they knew the Void tainted was defeated. She couldn't recall anything after that. Her head throbbed painfully. Don't hit me, please." The voice snapped her out of the daze. She looked around and noticed a little girl. The little girl had silver white hair and blood-red eyes. "It hurts." "Stop." The girl curled as the blue-haired man kicked her repeatedly. "Buck. I lost the fucking bet." Stop." "Shut up. Buck, did I give permission to you to talk? Now even you are ignoring me." The man left after he had taken out his anger on her. The little girl continued to cry. "It hurts." Tears slipped from her swollen eyes and mixed with the blood flowing out from her bruised lips. Black and purple marks throbbed on her limbs and torso after the man's her husband, beating. She lay broken on the floor, bleeding. Painful memories surged in Elizabeth's mind. The scene before her eyes changed. The little girl had grown up. She came of age, and her womanly features began to show, revealing her alluring appearance. However, her gaze remained vacant. The girl stared at the screen. She watched the drama depicting the love life of a princess and her prince with murky eyes. A princess. I'm a princess too. Will I be treated like that when I grow up? The blissful smile on her face disappeared when the door was smashed open and her husband entered, drunk. Elizabeth, who had been watching everything from the side, clutched her chest. This is a dream. It's just a nightmare. She took deep breaths to calm herself. The painful memories of her childhood were but a thing of the past. She repeated those words to herself. Elizabeth was breathing heavily. Her eyes quivered. The scene changed. She saw a woman looking down from the castle's window. The woman had a similar face as that of the little girl. However, her cold expression was vastly different. Unlike the girl who had spent her life waiting for help, living on others' terms, the woman had taken control of her life in her own hands and cut down those who went against her. "It's time," the woman muttered. "Should I ascend?" Elizabeth recalled that moment. It was long before the symptoms of the curse appeared. Back then, she had reached the peak of her strength. She was just a step away from becoming a god. The woman was lost in deep thoughts when suddenly a knock on the door echoed. "Mom, it's time for dinner. Paul and Sister Clara are waiting for you. Let's go." Amelia's voice flowed from the other side of the door. The woman's cold expression cracked. She revealed a small, but warm smile. "I'm on my way." The woman opened the door and attended the dinner with her family. She had decided against attaining godhood. To become a god, she would have to ascend and leave the world, leave her family behind. "I finally got what I wanted after those hellish years. There is nothing more that I want." Her family was enough for her. "I don't need power or godhood." Elizabeth, who had been watching the scene, started to tear up. She hurriedly wiped her tears when she noticed them. "Damn it." Neo sat next to Elizabeth. She was on the hospital bed, wrapped in bandages and injuries. The room was lit dimly, sterile, with monitors quietly beeping. Tubes and wires surrounded her frail, bandaged body as she rested, bruised and motionless on the hospital bed. "It's my fault." Neo clasped her hand and bit his lips. "I should have been more careful. I underestimated the strength of Temple of Void since they were just a budding organization at this period of time." His heart clenched when he noticed tears slip down Elizabeth's eyes. She is having a nightmare. He wiped her tears. The door of the hospital room swung open. Amelia entered. Her eyes were reddened and swollen, and her hair was unkempt. For some reason, she glared at Neo with intensity. She grabbed his arm before he could say anything and pulled him out of the room. After they had moved away from the room, Amelia grabbed Neo's collar and pushed him against the wall. "Why was Mom fighting against those people? How are you feeling, Amelia? I didn't see you after I came, and I've been worried." "Don't change the topic." Amelia held his collar so tightly that it started to rip. Tears gathered in her eyes. "I've checked her phone just now. You were the last person she talks to after going missing, and..." Watching Elizabeth in the ICU reminded her of the time when Elizabeth was about to die to Clara's, her sister, curse. "Neo, tell me. Please. Why is Mom hurt? The doctors are saying that she might not live. Please say that it isn't your fault." Amelia cried, almost begged. To say that he hadn't betrayed them. That he wasn't the reason why Elizabeth could die. Neo. Say something. Please. Say something. She pushed him against the wall with force. Neo avoided her gaze. I sent her there. Amelia stiffened. Tears slipped down her cheeks as her fears were confirmed. She let go of his collar. Why? The single word was all she could muster. I wanted her to take care of an organization. The Temple of Void. Neo nodded. Hope returned to Amelia's eyes. Why yeah, Neo wouldn't push Mom into harm's way. He must have asked her to scout the place, and she encountered the Temple of Void by coincidence. Chapter 198, The Price Demanded by Fate. Elizabeth had destroyed several cities, all belonging to Temple of Void, in her rampage. The news was spreading among the upper echelons already. Did you know Mom would encounter the people from Temple of Void? Amelia asked with a shaking voice. She shouldn't have asked such a question from Neo. He was the one who saved her mother from the curse. He was her savior. But after being betrayed by her siblings, she had started to doubt everyone. Neo exhaled deeply. Yes. Why didn't you tell Mother to bring more people with her? The truth was bare before her eyes, but she remained desperate. She wanted to hear anything, even if it was an excuse, to trust Neo. Neo. Answer me. More people could have jeopardized the secrecy of the mission. Besides, they would have become a burden on Elizabeth when the battle started. Then, why didn't you ask Sir Sebastian to go with Mother? He is an exalted demigod. Amelia didn't know why she questioned Neo. She wanted to know if he had purposely pushed Elizabeth into harm's way. She was afraid of the answer. Afraid that he would say yes. His answers until now were enough. They should have satisfied her even if they sounded like excuses. But she continued to question him despite not wanting to hear his answer. Neo remained silent. It was enough as an answer. A crisp echo rang, and a sharp pain rose from Neo's cheek. Amelia stormed away, crying. Left alone, Neo sighed. Buck. He moved down the corridor and left the building. After arriving in the park outside the place, he sat on a bench. He stared at the clear blue sky with a muddled gaze. Was my choice wrong? Neo shook his head. It wasn't. It wasn't wrong. If you had sent more people, then Elise might have actually died. He snapped his head towards the source of the voice. Charlotte, the principal, sat next to him on the bench. Her cane rested next to her, and she stared at the sky. It's funny, isn't it? The more you try to change the future, the more fate resists. She kept her eyes on the sky. There is a famous story among the time users. Do you know about it, brat? No. Neo answered, even though he was confused. He didn't understand what Charlotte was trying to say. 900 years ago, a genius was born. He grew up to be one of the best time mages. He was capable of going as far as 8 years into the past. Charlotte continued. He was prideful and arrogant for obvious reasons. One day, he was assigned to protect a village. Long story short, the village was destroyed by them. Neo's face hardened at the mention of them. He listened to Charlotte's story with attention. Arrogant as he was, the man was also kind. He regressed to save the village. He failed and regressed, failed and regressed, failed, regressed, failed, regressed. He kept going on for decades. Charlotte stopped for a moment. She took a glance at Neo before returning her gaze to the sky. He didn't have an extraordinary will. Nor was he kind enough to waste decades of his life in a fruitless attempt. The only reason he continued to regress was because he had fallen in love with a woman from the village. She chuckled. Why not escape with the woman? He did that, but it never worked. She would take her life after the village was destroyed. Charlotte smiled bitterly. The man was depressed and on the verge of losing his sanity from hundreds of failures. He was driven to the corner and he ended up breaking the taboo of regressors. He shared his pain, his past attempts and knowledge of future, with others and asked for help. Neo closed his eyes. Her last sentence was enough for him to know the ending of the story. The man saved the village and the woman he loved. In exchange, those he had revealed the future to died a brutal death a few months later. Charlotte sighed. The fate of death remained. The people who helped the man paid the price in his place. Shaking her head, Charlotte lowered her gaze. She stared at the park, at the trees rustling from the wind. Even 900 years later, we still don't have a concrete explanation as to why those people have to pay the price instead of the man. There are plenty of regressors who reveal the future. Take a few students in the academy as an example. They would regress after an exam and share the question paper with their friends. The fate wouldn't interfere in small cases like these. However, if it was something big, like the incident where an entire village's life is at stake, the fate would make sure the timeline doesn't change even if someone regresses. The bigger the stakes, the harder it is to make changes. Fate wouldn't let you act as you wish. Charlotte stood up. She walked to the front and turned to face Neo. Neo Hargraves, for what reason did you put my disciple's life on the line? What was the fate that you wanted to change? She trusted you. That's why she fought until she was on the verge of death. Don't worry. Neo exhaled. She will survive. His lips parted. I didn't tell her anything. She was clueless about the entire matter. I neither led her to the Temple of Void directly, nor did I help her catch them. He spoke without hesitation. In essence, she was just a piece in taking down the Temple of Void and I was the mastermind. Sure, I changed the future greatly. The fate would demand the price for it, of course. But it will leave Elizabeth alone. Neo never revealed the future to Elizabeth. She was spared from the wrath of fate. The fate would attack Neo and Neo alone. Because he was the only one who was aware the future was being changed. Charlotte's expression changed. She looked at Neo with pity. They were the priests of Void. Killing them like this is a big change. Can you pay the price for it? I don't know. Neo stood up. But I will do my best. He patted the dust off his clothes. Why did you target the Temple of Void specifically? I wanted to delay the inevitable. He turned to leave the park. Just as he had taken a step, Charlotte questioned him. The inevitable end of the world, she muttered. So you know about it. Everyone does. Neo's answer made her stiffen. She watched Neo's back grow smaller in the distance. Everyone knows about the end of the world. She repeated the words and a bitter smile appeared on her face. Of course, everyone knows about the inevitable end. After all, the world was supposed to have ended 500 years ago. Chapter 199, Bonding with True Soul Weapon. Neo roamed the campus aimlessly. Should I have given the trident to Elizabeth before the mission? Maybe I should have sent Sir Sebastian too. He could not decide if his choice had been perfect. I sent Elizabeth while she was in her weakest state to make sure the fate doesn't retaliate against her. If I had given her too much advantage, the fate could have interfered. But did I make the right choice? He bit his lips. Charlotte's words swirled inside his head. Elizabeth trusts you. That's why she put everything on the line for you. His face contorted. Damn it. Neo clenched his fist. Damn it. If only I was strong enough that I didn't have to depend on others, I wouldn't have to put Elizabeth's life on the line like this. Neo found himself to be pathetic. Even after everything that happened, he would have done the same if he had another chance. The Temple of Void was too dangerous to let them grow. They had a huge hand in causing the world's end. Even if a few stragglers are left, the Temple of Void is officially finished. Neo laughed bitterly. He extended the world's life by a decade in exchange for almost sacrificing the life of someone close to him. Pathetic. He was weak. That's why he had to resort to underhanded methods. I have to be stronger. His eyes glowed with renewed resolve. Stronger. Neo made his choice. He would enter shadow windows and try to find his shadow. If he didn't find his shadow until the day he got his exoskeleton surgery, he would stop looking for his shadow in the shadow windows. It's time I stop dawdling and enter the world of shadows. He had to take risks if he wanted power. Mars Private Training Room, Mars Dorm, Demigod Academy. Are you sure you want to do this here? Arthur questioned. Yes. Mars nodded. Let's get over with this quickly and make a plan to defeat Neo. He stood in the center of the room. Jack, Arthur, Felix, Nathan, Clara, and Sean were present around him. A man, with brown hair and thick limbs, stood near the door. You should do this at your clan, Nathan muttered nervously. They will be able to help you if something goes wrong. It's fine. The clan has sent Uncle here. Mars directed his gaze towards the man far from him. The others followed his gaze and nodded. I'll start. Mars took out a fist-sized black box. His friends retreated a few steps to give him space. He opened the box, revealing a bullet within it. A true soul weapon. Jack muttered with a complicated gaze. It feels weird knowing Neo had been carrying something like that around like nothing. Well, he spends millions like it's nothing. Felix shrugged. Jack agreed with her with a helpless smile. They stopped talking when Mars took out the bullet and held it in his hands. Nothing happened. A few minutes passed, and Arthur opened his mouth. Maybe you should drop your blood on it to bond with it. Arthur's mouth clamped shut and he covered his ears when suddenly a high-pitched noise screeched. The noise was coming from the bullet. The screeching increased. It feels like an attack. Arthur clenched his teeth. He tried to use his sound affinity to stop the screeching. Felix, the weakest among them, started to bleed from her ears and eyes. Arthur was about to help her when she stopped him. Help Mars. You see can help me later. Felix was on her knees, unable to handle the pressure oozing from the bullet. Mars, at the center of the screeching, had his eyes closed. His face remained motionless. It was as if he was saying an attack of this level was nothing for him. The screeching suddenly stopped. The bullet shot out of Mars' hand and flew towards the group at a blinding speed. Arthur dodged the bullet at the last second. It hit the wall like a cannon and left a deep crater. They were shocked, unable to understand what happened. Mars. Jack suddenly shouted. He ran towards Mars. Are you okay? Of course. Mars struggled to speak. He had grown extremely thin. His hollow cheeks and shriveled muscles made him look like he had been starved for a few weeks. Blood dripped from his hand. His fingers were mangled when the bullet shot out of his grasp. Jack supported Mars and helped him sit. No one spoke. They had grave expressions. Jack bandaged and applied medicines to Mars' damaged arm. Mars chuckled when he noticed the despondent atmosphere. It's fine. There is no need to be shocked like this. I expected something this to happen. Their excited expressions from minutes ago were nowhere to be seen. Mars. Felix opened her mouth. Sorry. It's fine. I told you I never expected much. It was clear to them Mars failed to bond with the true soul weapon. Despite Mars' calm expression, Felix could see the despair and relief hidden behind his gaze. While they were trying to console Mars, the man from Ares' clan took out the bullet of the wall and placed it back in the black box. Mars called out to him before he could leave the room. Leave the weapon here before you go. The man turned around. You failed to bond with the weapon, Mars Everhart. Since you lost its ownership, it now belongs to the clan. Who ordered you to do this? The clan council. Sigh. Mars shook his head. The clan head has given me his word that the weapon belongs to me. You should know what would happen to you if you go against the words of the clan head. The man's face hardened. The fear behind his gaze was evident. The council won't be able to protect you, Mars added. The man clicked his tongue after minutes of contemplation. He left the weapon inside the training ground and left. Please bring that to me, Mars said. Arthur picked the black box with the true soul weapon inside it and returned to Mars. Mars held the box in his hand. I can't bond with it. He raised his gaze and looked at Felix. So, it's better for someone else to have this. He threw it towards Felix lightly. She caught it in her hands, her eyes wide. What are you doing? You can't give me something precious like this. Your journey starts at Mvila Empire. Felix, Mars smiled weakly. The blood loss was making his head light. It's yours now. Before Felix could refuse, the box exploded. The bullet, as if alive, dug into her hand. Floor before Hargrave's mansion. Neo walked through the white corridors with a tired gaze. His clothes were tattered and covered in blood. He had been clearing shadow windows for the last few days with no success. Chapter 200, Absorbing the Trident of Poseidon. Seems like I need to enter the world of shadows to find my shadow. After walking through the white, sterile corridor for a few minutes, he came across a door. A green light shot out of the door and scanned Neo. Neo Hargraves confirmed, entry allowed. The doors opened with a shoosh. The massive laboratory behind still shocked Neo even though he had come here multiple times in the past days. A sprawling, high-tech laboratory filled with glowing holographic screens, advanced machinery, and sterile metal corridors. Robotic arms assembled complex devices, while scientists in sleek uniforms analyzed data on floating interfaces. The people wearing white clothes were busy with different experiments. They ignored him. Neo went past them and arrived at the door. At the other corner of the laboratory. The door opened, and he entered another room. The room was smaller than the laboratory. It had a single giant tube filled with an unknown liquid in the center. Pipes were connected to the tube. Their other end went underground. Henry and Luna stood before the tube. They were calibrating the device. I'm here. Oh, welcome. The two turned to see Neo. Henry frowned when he saw Neo's haggard state. However, he stayed silent. Neo, are you sure you want to go through this exoskeleton surgery? Luna questioned. We have developed a new technology for exoskeleton surgery. It is much safer than the standard surgery. However, the fact remains that the trident used to make the serum for the surgery is an antithesis to you. It can kill immortals. Luna pursed her lips and added. You might die. The chances are low, but they aren't zero. I'm okay with it. Neo smiled. He knew that the new technology for the surgery was not supposed to have been completed yet. It should have been complete 6 months later. Henry, along with Luna and other head scientists, have pushed themselves to the limit to complete the new technology for the surgery before the scheduled time. Because it was safer, and it increased Neo's chances of survival. Please remove your clothes and enter the pod. Neo nodded. He took off his clothes and climbed the ladder. The lid on top of the pod opened. He turned to Henry before entering the pod. Thank you. For doing your best for me. Neo entered the pod. The lid closed above him, and an unknown liquid entered the pod from the tubes connected to it. Henry watched the process, the concern behind his gaze clear to Neo. He stood with crossed arms, his fingers gripping his arms tightly, and he maintained a stoic expression. The liquid filled the pod to the brim. I'll start the process, Luna said. Neo nodded. He did not feel any different for a few minutes. As time passed, the temperature started to increase. It was bearable at first. As a mythic demigod, he could hold his breath for a few minutes and fend off slight heat easily. Only on Mvila Mpyr. It soon turned into scorching heat. Neo closed his eyes and tried to concentrate. He didn't want to thrash around in pain before his brother's eye and worry him. The scorching heat made his skin sizzle. The liquid seeped into his skin forcefully. It made him feel as if someone was forcing pebbles into the pores of his skin. The liquid started to turn red as Neo bled and it seeped deeper into his skin. Deeper and deeper. From skin to muscles. It continued sinking its fang into Neo until it reached the bones. The liquid touched them and wrapped itself around their surface. A sickening crunch echoed. Neo's bones started to break. The liquid was eating them. Corroding and replacing his bones. Neo stifled his screams. His nails dug into his skin as he tried to stop himself from blacking out. Pain. Neo was used to it. He should have been able to shrug it off. However, he felt as if his soul was being peeled away. Layer by layer. As if something entirely else was replacing the damaged parts. His very essence started to tremble. His consciousness grew hazy. Whispers entered his ears. Oh. Neo. Neo. He was jolted awake. Take deep breaths. Henry held him in his arms, having taken him out of the pod just a few seconds ago. How are you feeling? Answer me. Don't shout near my ears. Henry's expression relaxed when Neo answered him. He helped Neo stand. Can you give me a towel? Neo spoke as the pain disappeared slowly. Luna passed him the item. He wiped his body with trembling arms and turned to Henry. I can. Stand on my own. Shut the fuck up, bitch. Just take my support. Henry helped him to the seats at the end of the room. After taking a minute to wash away the drowsiness, Neo changed into his clothes. How are you feeling now? Luna questioned. She kept a notepad in her hands to write down the details about his condition. I'm good. Neo clenched his fists and reopened them several times. The pain and weakness had almost disappeared. It was replaced by a deep power coursing through his limbs. Luna took his full check before nodding. Seems like there are no harmful side effects. It's a miracle that the surgery ended so easily. Henry stared at Neo from the side. The trident merged with him too smoothly. His concept, Henry thought. The only reason I can think of is his concept. It must be something similar to the trident's trait, which is why the trident accepted him without much resistance. Neo stood up with a jump. The weakness had disappeared completely. He felt refreshed and energized. Let's test out my strength. The corner of his lips rose slightly, surprised by the changes in his body. I can feel my water and death mastery has increased. I'm almost at adept mastery in water element. Those must be the side effects, Luna explained. Exoskeleton surgery mainly strengthens the physical stats. I know. That's why I want to test my strength. If the side effects are so great, the boost to my physical strength must be immense. Henry clicked his tongue when he saw Neo excited like a child. Henry himself was extremely happy, However, he didn't show it. Fine. Follow me. Henry took Neo to the 6th basement floor. Luna followed behind them. They entered the 3rd door they encountered after entering the floor. The room beyond the door looked like a destroyed city. We test large-scale weapons here. You can try out your strength. Got it. Neo cut off Henry and stepped forward. He pulled his fist back and punched towards the 7th-floor building at the front. The air exploded. A beat later, Neo saw the building he had attacked. It had been pulverized along with dozens of buildings behind it. Henry remained expressionless. Luna, on the other hand, was shell-shocked. She had seen many mythic demigods. But... And Neo, what is your current rank? Grade 5 mythic. She couldn't believe her ears. Only grade 5. Luna turned to the destruction Neo had laid with a single punch and looked back at him.